Years ago, I was disowned by my family, but recently they have invited me, my wife, 27, and our daughter, 1, for Christmas. After getting conflicting advice from my friends, one of my buddies suggested I post my dilemma here to see what random internet strangers would say. For context, growing up, I was the black sheep of the family, and I knew that from a very young age. My family is full of athletes. My dad was a star basketball player for his school. My mom played volleyball, Michael played soccer, Sarah played softball, and Carl was the star running back for the football team. I was never really interested in any of those physical sports. Instead, I was interested in archery, which my family called a wimpy sport. My parents were always invested in my siblings and rarely attended my events. I basically had to beg them to come to my tournaments. Between the ages of 14 and 16, I participated in about 20 archery tournaments, but my parents only showed up to one. I was never neglected by them, but they were never emotionally there for me as they were for my siblings, and as a teenager, I resented that. Whenever I tried to bring this up to them, they would always call me an attention seeker. However, this is not why I was disowned by my family. When I was 15, I began dating Amy, now 25, who was in the same grade as me at that time. After about 6 to 7 months of dating, I introduced her to my folks and my siblings, and they really liked her. I know I was young, but I could see myself having a future with her. Almost 2 years later, one of Amy's ex-friends told me that she had been cheating on me for a couple of months. At the time, I didn't know who the guy was, but after confronting her, she told me that it was my twin brother. She basically told me that while at first she loved me, the love she had for my brother surpassed that. Later that day, when I confronted Carl at home, I was so enraged that I sucker punched him and knocked him out. I admit that I should not have gotten violent, but years of resentment towards him and the rest of the family just burst open. In exchange for my family not pressing charges on me, as I could have been tried as an adult in court, I was sent to live with my paternal aunt, 48, who at this point was estranged from the family and lived in another city about 2 hours away. From then on, I have not had any contact with them. At first, it was tough, but later on, with support from my aunt and her husband, 48, I moved on from wanting a relationship with them. I transferred to a different high school and attended a university in my aunt's city, graduating as an electrical engineer. I later met my wife and got married to her. At the time of my wedding, I thought about inviting my family but went against it because I did not want any sort of drama at my wedding. From that point, my wife and I bought a house an hour away from my aunt and were blessed with a daughter a year ago. About a week ago, I received a Facebook message from my mother and father wanting to reconnect over Christmas at their house. I told them that I would consider it as I possibly had other plans but would give them a clear answer soon. Later on, both Michael and Sarah sent me friend requests, which felt weird to me. My wife has told me that if I decide to go, she and my daughter would spend Christmas at my father-in-law's house as she does not want to deal with unwanted stress since she is 2 months pregnant, and I agree with her. My question to those reading this is, should I go and try to reconcile with my family or should I not? I'm very conflicted on what to do. On one hand, they perhaps feel bad about what they did to me and want to apologize. But on the other hand, perhaps if I go there, they will try to make me apologize to Carl, which I do not want to do. Any advice would be helpful. Top advice before the update. I think you should go another time. Spend Christmas with your wife and child. Visit your family at a less stressful time to see if they have any ulterior motives. It might just be about them wanting to see their grandchildren and not so much about you, which would be hurtful to you. Yeah, I agree. Go another time. I was thinking the same thing. It could be something related to the grandkids. Spend Christmas with your wife and child. Christmas is too big of an event to meet them. Also, update us. I can't get this post out of my head. I can't imagine a parent kicking out their child who was betrayed by their other child. They might want to reconnect due to money, the grandchild, I don't know. But it's weird that even his siblings texted OP. I hope it's for good reasons though. I honestly wouldn't spend Christmas away from my pregnant wife for them. Maybe I'm missing something, but why Christmas? They could have reached out at any time and given you a chance to pick a convenient time, as they are the ones trying to amend things. I don't know, it seems weird to me. I personally wouldn't go unless you desperately want them back in your life. Optics. They found out OP has a kid, is successful, and now they're trying to heal the family so they don't look like trash for abandoning their son years ago. It's a trap. Notice they didn't open with any remorse or any sign of an apology. They want something: money, free work, an organ, access to your babies, or just to look good to their friends. I'm not saying don't go, but keep your expectations low. Be ready for the "we need you to do X for us" in order to properly reconcile speech and have a quick exit prepared. I don't know. As a parent, I cannot fathom going no contact with one of my children for 8 years after my other child did something so cruel to him. So he hit him? That is just inconceivable to me. I would totally understand if my son hit his brother if he ever did something like that. Maybe I'm wrong, and I know I'm not supposed to say that, but we're all still human. Whether you can move past the fact they abandoned you to your aunts and turned their backs for 8 years is your choice, but personally, I don't know if I could. If you can't and don't want to see them again, I doubt anyone would blame you. If they do, they don't know the full story. If they do know the full story, then they're not worth your time either. And now for the update. I wanted to post earlier, but some things got in the way. 2 days after Christmas, my wife began to experience unbearable pain in her abdomen area, and she could hardly stand on her 2 feet. My sister-in-law, 30, and I rushed her to the hospital, where we found out that my wife had suffered a miscarriage and that the fetus had to be removed right away. Honestly, the worst part was explaining to my wife what had happened. Due to complications surrounding the operation, my wife was forced to stay for 2 more days. Honestly, I have been trying to stay strong for my wife and my daughter, but I'm struggling right now. On to the update of the original post. Most of you that commented on the same day told me not to spend Christmas with them because of the significance of that holiday. I agreed and decided I would spend the rest of the holidays with my wife. They never made time for me, so why should I make time for them? When I texted them this, I assumed they would try to argue with me, but rather they said they respected my opinion and could not wait to see me after the holidays. I began to do some digging into my family to try to figure out why they reached out. Michael is a corporate lawyer who works for a major company in my hometown. By looking through his Facebook page, he has 2 daughters and was married to his wife in 2016. Sarah appears to be married to a doctor. She was studying to be a nurse 8 years ago, and they have a son together. I have a friend who lives in my hometown and has parents who are friends with my parents. When I asked her about Sarah, she told me that Sarah had divorced her first husband, the one she was dating 8 years ago, after he had committed mail fraud. Carl got married to Amy right after high school, and they have 2 kids together. I cannot exactly figure out what he or his wife does for a living through Facebook, but judging that they bought a big house last year in the midst of a pandemic tells me they're not really struggling. My dad seems to be going through a midlife crisis, and my mother is really into the wellness community. Then I began to list the reasons why they might have wanted to reach out to me now. Money. 8 years ago, my parents' combined salary was higher than my wife's and my salary. Given that my siblings are not struggling financially, money might not be the reason. Organ donation. This could be the case, but it seems unlikely. A commenter suggested that Carl, given he is my twin, would be my most likely match, but this seems unlikely because he was tagged in a Facebook post. My paternal grandpa, 79 male, and grandma, 76 female, had 4 children. My dad was the second oldest, and my aunt was the third. After college, my aunt came out to her parents as bisexual and began dating her girlfriend. My grandparents immediately disowned her and refused to have any contact with her. However, about 4 years ago, my grandpa began to reach out. About a month ago, my grandpa had been asking about me, what I was doing in life, and whether I was married or had kids. My aunt responded by calling my grandpa out for wanting to know about me after he supported Carl for what he did. That is when the whole situation changed. My grandpa told my aunt that it was because I had cheated on Amy with one of her close friends, so I deserved to be estranged. My grandpa is a religious nut, so he looks down on cheating. He had been told by my family that after the friend who I allegedly cheated with confessed to Amy, she went to Carl and Sarah for support and comfort. When I found out about this, I confronted and brutally attacked Carl and Sarah. While Sarah was the one who tried to break me and Carl apart, I did not lay a finger on her, and I did not do that to Carl. When my aunt was telling me this, my jaw dropped. I could not believe that they hated me so much that they were willing to make up a terrible lie about me and spread it around. My aunt later told Grandpa the full truth about what truly happened, but my aunt told me he was shocked because he always thought Carl was a good kid. My grandpa then asked my aunt for my number, which she declined to give. I figured out why my parents and siblings wanted to get in touch with me. It turns out my grandpa had told my parents and siblings that if they did not apologize for what they did to me and have me over for the family Christmas dinner, they would be cut off from his will. For context, he is a multimillionaire. So that is why they reached out to me, not to apologize for how they all wronged me in the past, but rather because if they did not, they would not get anything from Grandpa. What a bunch of greedy people. After hearing about this from my aunt, I decided to block all of them. Why should I respond to them at this point? All of them are dead to me. I have a wife to support after what she went through and a family that respects me, including my in-laws. However, this does not end here. 3 days after New Year's Eve, I received a call from an unknown number on my work phone. I'm used to getting calls from unknown numbers because of my career. But when I picked up, I heard my grandfather's voice. He most likely got my number from my company website. The first thing he did was apologize for not trying to get in contact with me for the past 8 years. He told me he was sorry that he could not be there for important events such as my graduation, wedding, and the birth of my daughter. I was not really close to him before, so him cutting me off did not bother me. Later in the call, he told me he was so disgusted with the rest of my family that he is cutting them off as well and adding me to the will. I honestly do not know how to feel about that, as the money would be helpful, but at the same time, I do not want him to use this as a way to force a relationship between me and my daughter. We talked for about half an hour. The way the call went made me think that perhaps I could build a good relationship with my grandpa, but then he told me something that got me really pissed. He told me that he was disappointed that my daughter had not taken the family name. For context, after I got married to my wife, the issue of what last name to use as a couple came up. For some legal reasons, I wasn't able to change my last name to my wife's last name, but we decided as a couple that all of our future children would have her last name. At this point, I unloaded on my grandpa, calling him a senile old man and many other hurtful things, and told him to never contact me ever again. The audacity of this man to say that after what I went through is something I will not let slide. He cannot use the money I might receive in the will to control me. Even if I receive the money, I will donate it to a local charity. But he is a man of false promises, so this is unlikely. These past few weeks have been really tough for me, and I hope to make it to the other side. My wife has privated her Facebook account, and my in-laws have done the same. What they will do to try to contact me is beyond me. Hell, they would probably hire a private detective to try to find me. I believe they do not know where we live. But you never know. I've thought about getting a restraining order, but given that there are lawyers within the family, getting a restraining order will be hard. I did not really get any time to answer any questions given in my last post before it was deleted for some reason. I will do my best to answer any questions for the next day or two, but after this, I'm done using the site for a while. Thank you for all your advice, and I wish you all the best in this new year. Thank you. Sorry for your loss. I hope your wife gets well soon. Your family is having a difficult few weeks. Don't let those people get to you. I have to say, besides Grandpa's awful comments about the last name, at least the truth is out that makes those people look bad. Grandpa can keep the money if it comes your way. Before you do something, think about it when you are calm. You chose good people to be your family, your wife, daughter, in-laws at the end. They're all that matter. The others can go to hell. I'm sorry for what you've been through and for the loss of your child. Remember, you have support in a family that loves you. You are wanted and loved by them, even if your parents and siblings aren't those people. You are not alone. Seek professional support and help for yourself and your wife. It's a lot you've gone through. Unfortunately, due to the new variant, it has been delayed. Offloading on your granddad might have convinced him that your aunt was full of crap and to give your family their inheritance, especially since they tried to convince him that you're some barely contained psycho and you offloaded at the first disagreement with him. You were well within your rights to be offended, but you just cut off your nose to spite your face there. The guy must be old and is going to have old-fashioned values. Did you try explaining that it's something that's done in society nowadays, or did you see red immediately? To be honest, you've had a really rough time of things, and I imagine that must have been the straw that broke the camel's back, right? I just figured you might.
My life was a whirlwind of meetings, sales pitches, and endless negotiations. I'm Anna, 38, and I've climbed my way up to sales director at one of the top car manufacturers. My world was about hitting targets and sealing deals, not romance or late-night dates. I had a plush apartment in the city center, a sleek, top-of-the-line car, and a wardrobe that screamed success. Love? It never topped my priority list. Then Alex walked into my office, a fresh hire, 15 years my junior, with a smile that could knock you off your feet. "Anna, right? I've heard a lot about you. Looking forward to learning from the best," he said, extending his hand. His confidence was off the charts for someone so new. "Hope you're ready to work hard," I replied, taking his hand. It was firm, confident. This place doesn't run on smiles alone. Alex nodded. "Absolutely. I'm here to give it my all." Our interactions were professional at first. But Alex had this way about him, a charm that was hard to ignore. He'd drop by my office with reports, always eager to discuss strategies or the next big sale. His enthusiasm was infectious, and I found myself looking forward to our little meetings. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Alex knocked on my office door as I was about to leave. "Fancy grabbing a bite?" "My treat. I've got a few ideas I'd love to run by you." I hesitated. It wasn't like me to mix work with personal time, but something about his offer was tempting. "Sure, why not? But I'm choosing the place," I said. Dinner was a revelation. Alex wasn't just a pretty face with a sales pitch. He was smart, insightful, and, surprisingly, wise beyond his years. He listened intently as I shared some of my experiences, nodding and throwing in his 2 cents. As the night wore on, the conversation shifted from work to personal stories. I found out he was passionate about cars, not just selling them, but understanding their mechanics, their soul. He had this dreamy look when he talked about his favorite models, which made me laugh. "You're like a kid in a candy store," I teased. He shot back, "And you're the tough cookie everyone's afraid to crumble. Heard the rumors, you know. But I think there's more to you." His words caught me off guard. No one had dared to speak to me so frankly in years. It was refreshing, unsettling even. As we parted ways that night, he said, "Thanks for giving me a chance, Anna. Not just at work." Tonight was nice. I found myself smiling all the way home. Alex had managed to chip away at the wall I'd built around myself, and I was both terrified and thrilled by it. Our relationship evolved quickly after that night. His attention wasn't just flattering, it felt genuine. He'd leave notes on my desk with silly jokes or quotes from our conversations. And his bright, beautiful way of looking after me made my doubts about the age and income difference seem insignificant. But love isn't just about the butterflies or the stolen glances across a crowded room. It's about choosing to stand by someone, to merge your lives together with all the risks it entails. When Alex asked me to marry him, my heart wanted to leap out and say yes, before my brain could catch up with all the reasons it was a bad idea. "You sure about this, Alex? I mean, look at us. I could practically be your..." "Stop," he cut me off, his eyes serious. "I don't care about the age thing, Anna. I love you. That's all that matters. And your money? Come on, we both know I'm not with you for that." His words were like a balm to my nagging doubts. "All right, but we're doing this as equals, got it? We split everything down the middle." "Wouldn't have it any other way," he replied, pulling me into a hug. So, we did. We combined our lives, our finances, everything. I even helped him climb the ladder at work, sharing tips and advice that only years in the industry could teach. He was a quick study, impressing everyone, including my boss. Our partnership seemed unshakable. Life with Alex was like stepping into a fast car with a full tank, ready for the long haul. We decided early on to handle our dough like a team, splitting expenses down the middle, half to us, half to a joint account we set up. Makes sense, right? Keeps things square, I said, laying out the plan on our kitchen table, scattered with bills and our laptops. Damn straight, Alex agreed, tapping away on his calculator. And hey, about the apartment. It's ours, babe. Your name's going on that mailbox too. I cut in before he could get all shy about living in my upscale pad. His grin was all the thanks I needed. And when I handed him the keys to a shiny new car a week later, his eyes about said it all. For real, Anna? This is too much. Consider it a bonus for being a top-notch husband. Plus, you gotta look the part at work, right? I winked, tossing him a box with a high-end suit. Work was where we really kicked butt together. I poured everything I knew into this guy, teaching him the ropes, the shortcuts, the long plays. Before long, Alex was nailing it, climbing the ladder till he landed a big promotion. Head of the department, can you believe it? He beamed, still a bit dazed. Proud? I'm beyond. You earned it, with a little help from your favorite mentor. I teased, but inside, I was all warm and fuzzy. We were a dream team. Then, out of nowhere, I hit a snag. Started feeling off, like my engine was running low. After a few days of brushing it off, I headed to the clinic. The doc's frown told me it wasn't just a bug. We need to run some tests, Anna. Might take a few days. My mind raced to work. Shit, I've got a mountain of stuff to handle. Alex, you think you can cover for me? Just till I get this sorted? Alex, ever my rock, didn't blink. Of course, babe. You've got nothing to worry about. I'll handle it. I spent the next few nights at the clinic, my laptop glued to me, prepping everything Alex needed to keep the wheels turning at work. Despite feeling like crap, I made sure he had every detail, every document, every plan laid out. Just follow the playbook, Alex. It's all there. I told him over the phone, my voice barely above a whisper. Got it, boss, he joked, trying to keep the mood light. You just focus on getting better. I've got this. But as the days stretched out and my return to work got delayed, I leaned on Alex more and more. Each call, each email, I could sense he was feeling the pressure, but also thriving under it. You're doing great, Alex. Just a bit longer, I promise, I reassured him, but the guilt was gnawing at me for dumping this on him. Don't sweat it, Anna. We're in this together, right? You'd do the same for me, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice, mixed with a hint of something else. Pride? Excitement? Hard to tell. Back on my feet and back at work, I barely had time to catch my breath before my boss called me in. Anna, you've been away. Alex stepped in, and, well, he nailed it. He started, not beating around the bush. I braced myself, expecting a pat on the back for training him so well, but instead, I got sucker punched. He's taking over your position. You'll be moved to a different department. Lower profile, he finished, avoiding my gaze. I was floored. All the work I'd poured into those negotiations, every strategy, every word of that winning speech, was mine. Yet, here I was, getting sidelined in my own game. But, I laid the groundwork for that. It was all me, I wanted to scream. But I bit my tongue, thinking of Alex's career, his pride. Understood, was all I managed, my voice a mix of defeat and disbelief. Coming home, I found Alex, all smiles and victory. Heard you got the news. Babe, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen, he said, but his eyes didn't match his words. They were dancing, celebrating. Yeah, sorry, doesn't quite cut it, Alex. This was my deal, my job. I shot back, anger bubbling up. Hey, let's not get nasty. We're in this together, right? He replied, his tone too light, too dismissive for the bomb he'd just dropped on us. That's when the dynamic shifted. My paycheck shrunk, while his ballooned. And with the money came a change in Alex. He started throwing around words like breadwinner and freeloader, stinging me every chance he got. I tried to shake it off, remind myself of the man I married. He loves me, this is just stress talking, I'd tell myself, but the doubts were creeping in. Then came the nights he wouldn't come home, the excuses so thin you could see right through them. Working late, babe, big deals on the line. He'd text, but the silence of the house screamed the truth. Finally, I'd had enough. We need to talk, Alex. This isn't working. Where the hell are you every night? I demanded, cornering him one morning after he'd sneaked in at dawn. Oh, come on, Anna. You should be grateful I'm still here. A guy like me, with options? He threw back, his arrogance filling the room like a bad smell. That was the moment I knew. The man I loved, the partner I trusted, was gone, replaced by this stranger, spewing insults and taking me for granted. Every day at the office turned into a nightmare faster than I could have ever imagined. My work, my ideas, everything I had poured my heart and soul into, were now being presented under Alex's name. He had compiled an extensive report, a masterpiece of all my projects, and handed it over to the board as his own. The revelation was a gut punch, leaving me winded and betrayed. The board's decision was swift and merciless. Anna, we're letting you go, they said, their words clinical, detached. Your performance has been lacking. The irony of their words, considering my work was flourishing under Alex's guise, wasn't lost on me. I was being fired for failing to perform tasks I hadn't even been credited for. Shell-shocked, I returned home, a storm brewing within me. Alex was there, humming some tune, oblivious to the bombshell about to drop. We need to talk, I stated, my voice ice-cold, cutting through the pretense of normalcy. He turned, that familiar smirk playing on his lips. Sure, what's up? It's over, Alex. I know everything. How you claimed my work as your own, how you got me fired. I spat out, each word laced with venom. For a moment, his facade slipped, revealing a flicker of guilt, but it was quickly replaced by defiance. Oh, come on, Anna. You're being dramatic. I just played the game better. Played the game? You backstabbed me, Alex. You destroyed my career for your gain. My voice rose, a crescendo of anger and hurt. He shrugged, that smugness returning. Look, Anna, I got tired of always being the second fiddle. I saw an opportunity and I took it. This was about survival. About advancing. You would have done the same. I was aghast. How dare you? I would never do what you've done. I brought you into my world, taught you everything, and this is how you repay me? Alex's response was cold, calculated. You're just upset because you're not on top anymore. Face it, Anna, this is how the world works. I'm just better at it than you. The finality in his voice, the outright dismissal of our history, our love, was the last straw. I want a divorce, Alex. And you need to leave. Now. His laugh was bitter, filled with a disdain I'd never heard before. Fine by me. I was getting bored anyway. You think you're the only game in town? I've got prospects, Anna. Without you holding me back, I'll reach heights you couldn't even dream of. Watching him pack, a part of me wanted to scream, to rage, to make him see the magnitude of his betrayal. But another part, a quieter, more resigned voice, whispered that this was the end of a chapter. A painful, brutal conclusion to a story I thought would have a happier ending. After discovering the betrayal, I didn't waste a second. The shared account we had was bone dry. Alex had cleaned us out, transferring a whopping $320,000 to his account. The shock of it nearly floored me, but I wasn't about to let him get away with it. I reached out to a lawyer, someone known for not playing nice when it came to dirty games like this. Sitting across from my lawyer, I laid it all out. He took everything, every damn cent. Can you believe that? I said, my anger boiling over with each word. The lawyer, a no-nonsense type with a reputation for being a bulldog in court, didn't even blink. I've seen worse. Let's go after him. You're entitled to half of that money at the very least, he declared, already flipping through the legal texts with a predator's grin. So, we sued. Dragged Alex and his sneaky theft into the glaring light of a courtroom. The process was grueling, dragging my already battered heart through the mud, but it was worth it. The court didn't have any patience for Alex's flimsy defenses. He claims he earned that money. my lawyer scoffed during one of our prep sessions, shaking his head in disbelief. But we've got the bank records, the documents. He's going down. And go down he did. The judge saw right through Alex's act and ordered him to cough up $160,000. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about drawing a line, showing him he couldn't just trample over me and walk away scot-free. With the lawsuit out of the way, I pushed forward with the divorce. I was done, completely and utterly done. I want my name back, I told the lawyer. My life back. The divorce papers were a mere formality after the legal battle we just won. I watched as Alex signed them, his face a mask of defeat. "Anna, can't we?" he started, but I cut him off. "Save it, Alex. It's over." "You made sure of that," I said, my voice cold, final. Walking out of that office, I felt lighter, despite the turmoil that had become my life. It was over. I was free of him, of us. My former surname felt like a shield, a piece of me I'd reclaimed from the wreckage. But life had one more curveball to throw at me. During a routine checkup, still reeling from the divorce and the legal drama, the doctor dropped a bombshell. "You're pregnant," she said, her tone gentle, knowing how much my world had already been rocked. Pregnant. With Alex's child. The news was a jolt, a confusing mix of joy and fear. For a moment, I considered telling him, but the thought was fleeting. No, this was my new start, my chance to build something beautiful from the ashes of my past. I'm moving forward, without him, I resolved, cradling the burgeoning new life within me, ready to face whatever came next on my own terms. After the storm had passed, I set my sights on a new horizon. I wasn't just looking for a new job, I was on the hunt for a fresh start, a place that would value me and the new life I was about to bring into the world. I sent my resume to several big names, hoping my reputation as a sharp mind in the industry hadn't been completely tarnished by recent events. The response was more than I could have hoped for. Interviews lined up back to back, each company more eager than the last to bring me on board. It was during one particular interview that I found what I was looking for, a company that didn't just see me as a potential asset, but as a person. "We've heard a lot about you, and we're impressed," the hiring manager started, his tone sincere. "We're ready to offer you a competitive package, and yes, we're talking a significant bump in salary and a work schedule that fits your needs." I leaned in, ready to negotiate, but also to lay all my cards on the table. "I appreciate that, really. But there's something you should know, I'm expecting." The manager paused, his expression unreadable for a moment, but then he smiled. "Congratulations. That's not a problem. We offer remote work options, and we'd be more than happy to accommodate any appointments or needs you might have." It was more than I had dared to hope for. "Thank you," I said, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. "I won't let you down." With the job secured, my next project was my apartment. It needed a makeover, not just a fresh coat of paint but a transformation into a home ready to welcome a child. I pored over designs and themes, wanting everything to be perfect. In between setting up the nursery and picking out the softest, safest baby gear, I started attending courses for expectant mothers. It wasn't just about learning the basics of childcare. It was about connecting with other women going through the same whirlwind of emotions and changes. We shared stories, advice, and more than a few laughs about the wild ride of pregnancy. "Okay, so I read that babies can hear us in there," I mentioned during one session, tapping my belly gently. "Started talking to yours yet?" One of the moms chuckled, patting her own bump. "Oh, all the time. I'm pretty sure mine's already sick of my voice." It was a community, a support network I hadn't realized I'd needed until I found myself in the thick of it. Every book I read, every class I attended, I felt more prepared, more excited for what was to come. As life started to look up for me, word got around about Alex's rapid descent from his short-lived throne. Mutual friends, the kind you keep out of courtesy rather than affection, couldn't wait to spill the details. "Heard about Alex?" One pinged me, almost too eager. Bombed big time at your old place. They canned him. I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of vindication, but it was bittersweet. Really? That's unfortunate, I replied, keeping it cool but curious. What happened? Got too big for his boots. Messed up some major deals, lost the company a fortune. Now he's out on his ass, drowning in debt. Fancy cars and designer suits don't come cheap, huh? The friend typed back, a virtual smirk in their tone. The news didn't surprise me. Alex had always had a taste for the finer things, a taste he clearly couldn't afford on his own. His downfall was inevitable, but I didn't take pleasure in his misery. Well, maybe just a little. Then, out of the blue, my old employer reached out, trying to woo me back with promises and apologies. We were wrong, they said. We need you back, Anna. You were the brains behind it all. Tempting as it was to gloat, I declined. Thanks, but no thanks. I've moved on. Found a better fit, I told them firmly, my pride and my new job giving me all the satisfaction I needed. Amidst this, Alex had the audacity to reach out, his message popping up unexpectedly. Anna, we should talk. Heard about the baby. I think we can make this work, for the sake of our family, he wrote, desperation seeping through his words. I stared at the screen, incredulous. After everything, he thought he could just waltz back into my life. Family? You've got a funny way of showing you care, Alex. I'm doing just fine on my own, thanks, I replied, my laughter bitter. His pleas continued, but I wasn't the same woman he left. Look, Anna, I'm in a rough spot. I made mistakes, but we can start over. For our child, he tried again, playing what he thought was his ace. I couldn't help but laugh, a real, hearty laugh this time. Start over? With you? Alex, you're not listening. I'm happy. Truly happy. Without you. Our child will have everything they need, and you? You're not part of this equation. Good luck with your debts. And with that, I blocked him. The chapter of my life with Alex was closed, sealed shut with the knowledge that I was better off. I had my child, my dignity, and a future bright with promise. Life took on a new rhythm with the arrival of my son. The challenges and heartaches of the past seemed to fade into the background as I navigated the joys and sleepless nights of motherhood. I remember calling my mom, excitement bubbling in my voice. He's here, Mom. You're a grandma. I told her, barely containing my happiness. Her response was immediate. I'm catching the next flight out. You're not doing this alone. True to her word, Mom was by my side in no time, her presence a comforting constant as I found my footing as a new parent. It wasn't long before we settled into a routine, and with her help, I was back at work, feeling more determined than ever. The idea of buying a house started to take shape in my mind, a place where we could grow as a family, a stable home for my son and enough space for Mom to stay comfortably. During one of our late-night talks, as we shared a pot of tea and watched the baby sleep, Mom brought up the topic of Alex. Heard your ex is running himself ragged, juggling jobs to keep afloat, she said, a note of concern in her voice. I sighed, the mention of Alex still a sour note in my otherwise harmonious life. Yeah, well, he made his bed. Now he has to lie in it. Mom nodded, then hesitated before adding, you could sue him for child support, you know. It's his responsibility too. I shook my head, the thought unappealing. No, Mom. I don't want his money. Or anything from him, really. We're better off without that tie to him. I want to close that chapter for good. Mom seemed to understand, but she pressed on gently. Just think about it, okay? For your son's sake. The topic weighed on me, but deep down, I knew my decision was final. I wanted a clean break from Alex, a future untainted by the past. The idea of the house became a plan in motion. I found myself browsing listings, imagining our lives in each space. What do you think, Mom? Too ambitious? I'd ask, showing her pictures of backyards and spacious kitchens. Nothing is too ambitious for you, she'd reply, her faith in me unwavering. "You've proven that time and again." My son's laughter filled our apartment, a sound that made every hardship worth it. My career was on an upward trajectory, my personal life rich with love and support. The house, when we finally found it, felt like the last piece of a puzzle clicking into place, a symbol of new beginnings and hard-won peace. My life's been nothing short of a roller coaster, but whose isn't, right? Born to a dad who had to play both roles after my mom decided motherhood wasn't her gig, I grew up quick, learned tough, and got myself through college without much fuss. Dad was the real MVP, working odd jobs, making sure I had what I needed, and keeping me on the straight and narrow. After college, I packed up my life and moved to the city for a job that sounded way fancier than it was, manager at a car company. It was there, in the thick of engine oil and sales targets, that my path took a turn I never saw coming. The night I met Daniel, I was out with some work friends, blowing off steam at some dive bar that had more character than cleanliness. He walked in like he owned the place, and maybe in a way, he did, charming the socks off anyone within a 2-foot radius. Our eyes locked, and that was that. Fate, if you believe in that sort of thing. "Hey," he said, sliding up next to me at the bar. His smile was easy, his confidence infectious. "Hey yourself," I shot back, trying to match his vibe, but feeling my cheeks heat up. "Smooth, Erica, real smooth. What's a girl like you doing in a dump like this?" His tone was teasing, his grin wide. "Living the dream, clearly," I replied, rolling my eyes, but unable to keep the smirk off my face. "And you? Lost on your way to a GQ photo shoot?" He laughed, a sound that warmed me from the inside out. "Something like that. I'm Daniel, by the way." "Erica." Shaking his hand felt like sealing some unspoken deal. Little did I know. We talked for hours that night, about everything and nothing. The more we chatted, the more I realized Daniel was more than just a pretty face. He was smart, funny, and had a kind of sincerity that was hard to come by. When he asked for my number, I didn't think twice. Our whirlwind romance kicked off from there. Dates turned into weekends together, and before we knew it, 2 years had flown by. Daniel popped the question on a chilly evening in December, right in the middle of the street, with snow gently falling around us. It was so cliché, so unexpected, and so perfectly us. "Marry me, Erica. I'm a better man with you by my side," he said, his breath fogging in the cold air. I was speechless, a rare state for me. "Are you out of your mind? It's freezing, and you choose now to ask?" I teased, even as tears prickled at the corners of my eyes. "Would you have me any other way?" He grinned, dropping to one knee right there on the icy sidewalk. "In your dreams, Daniel. Of course, I'll marry you." And just like that, our new beginning started. After the whole knee and snow proposal scene, life with Daniel took on a new kind of normal. We were in that love bubble where even the burnt toast felt like a sign of our quirky domestic bliss. But as with any couple, the real world wasn't about to let us float too high without a reality check. "Erica, we've been trying for a while now. Maybe we should see a doctor, just to check everything's alright," Daniel said one evening, his voice laced with a concern he tried to mask with a casual shrug. I paused, the reality of our situation sinking in. "Yeah, I guess it wouldn't hurt. I just thought it would have happened by now, My voice trailed off, a mix of disappointment and worry creeping in. The tests were a blur of clinical words and sympathetic smiles. "Everything seems in order, but these things can sometimes take time," the doctor had said, offering a reassuring pat on the shoulder that felt more patronizing than comforting. Months turned into a year, and the strain began to show. Not just on me, but on us. Daniel was trying to be supportive, but the disappointment each month was a heavy silence we both carried. One night, after yet another negative test, Daniel found me on the couch, staring blankly at the TV, not really seeing anything. "Hey," he said softly, sitting down beside me and taking my hand. "Talk to me, Erica." I sighed, the weight of our struggles pressing down on me. What if it never happens, Daniel? What if we can't have a baby? Daniel squeezed my hand, his eyes meeting mine with a fierceness I hadn't expected. Then we'll figure it out. Together. We always do. But I refuse to believe that. We're going to have a family, Erica, no matter what it takes. His words were a lifeline, pulling me back from the edge of despair. I love you, Daniel. I just hate seeing you disappointed. Disappointed? Erica, the only disappointment is seeing you this upset. We're in this together, remember? Screw everything else. And then, when we least expected it, the impossible happened. I was late, but not in the way I'd grown accustomed to each month, with a sinking heart. This time, hope flickered to life, cautious and fragile. Daniel, I called out, holding the pregnancy test in shaky hands. Can you come here? He appeared in the doorway, his expression a mix of curiosity and concern. What's up? I held out the test to him, the positive sign glaring back at us in bold defiance of all the months of heartache. We're going to have a baby, I whispered, disbelief and joy mingling in my voice. Daniel's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. He scooped me up in his arms, spinning me around as he laughed, a sound so pure and full of happiness it brought tears to my eyes. I told you, Erica. I told you we'd make it happen. His voice was triumphant, his hold on me tight and reassuring. That night, we celebrated, just the two of us, talking about the future, our dreams for our child, and how we couldn't wait to meet the little person who had already changed our lives. Quitting my job wasn't an easy decision, but Daniel was pretty adamant about it. Babe, we need you focusing on the little one. We'll manage. I'll take care of everything else, he'd said, his tone leaving little room for argument. I knew he meant well, wanting to provide for us and ease my burden, but the reality of my days, filled with sickness and exhaustion, was far from what I'd imagined. Mornings were the worst. I'd wake up, run to the bathroom, and barely make it back to bed before the exhaustion hit me like a truck. It wasn't just the nausea, my whole body felt like it was rebelling against me, swelling up and aching in places I didn't even know could ache. Daniel, can you grab me some crackers? I'd call out weakly, hoping to stave off another wave of nausea. But more often than not, Daniel was already out the door, his second job eating up all his time. The few times he was home, I could barely keep my eyes open, let alone maintain a conversation. You're always sleeping, he'd snap, his patience wearing thin. Don't you care about anything else anymore? His words stung, adding guilt to the cocktail of discomfort I was already dealing with. I'm trying, I'd whisper back, tears welling up in my eyes. You think I enjoy this? Our arguments became more frequent, each one leaving a bitter taste and widening the gap between us. The joy of expecting our first child was overshadowed by the strain it put on our relationship. Daniel's late nights and my physical woes had us living like strangers under the same roof. One night, as I lay on the couch, too tired and sore to move to the bed, Daniel came home later than usual. The sound of the door slamming jolted me awake, my heart racing. Another long night? I asked, my voice hoarse from disuse. What do you think? He retorted, his voice sharp with exhaustion. Someone's gotta pay for all this, he added, gesturing vaguely around our small apartment. I bit my lip, holding back the tears. I miss you, Daniel. We hardly talk anymore. He sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture I knew meant he was stressed. Erica, I'm doing the best I can here. I don't know what you want from me. I want us back, I said softly, the loneliness in my voice echoing in the silence that followed. With Daniel working all hours and me trying to prep for our baby girl's arrival, things were tense. His folks, though, were a godsend. Living just a short drive away, they'd pop over often, helping out however they could. His mom, Linda, was particularly amazing, taking the lead on throwing a baby shower that was nothing short of spectacular. Linda turned our little apartment into a pink wonderland, filled with flowers, treats, and laughter. She even crafted this elaborate diaper cake that was both bizarre and beautiful. The wall behind the dining table was adorned with Sophia, our chosen name, in big, glittery letters. It was perfect, except for one glaring absence, Daniel. I'd asked him, no, pleaded with him to make it back in time. It's important to me, Daniel. Please, try to leave work early for once, I had said over the phone that morning, hope threading through my voice. Yeah, I'll see what I can do, he'd muttered, the sound of his keyboard clacking in the background. I should have known then not to get my hopes up. The party was a hit, with Linda's games and jokes keeping everyone entertained. Yet, my eyes kept darting to the door, wishing for it to open and Daniel to walk through. But he didn't. Not until long after the last guest had left, long after the laughter had died down. He stormed in at 11 p.m., the joy of the day evaporating the second I saw his face, contorted in anger. What the hell happened here? He barked, staring at the mess of decorations and leftover food. I was on the sofa, feet swollen, emotions frayed. It was the baby shower, Daniel. Your mom and I, we organized it together. And you couldn't clean up? What's with that stupid name on the wall? Is that supposed to stay there? His words were like daggers, each one slicing through the happiness I had felt just hours before. Tears spilled over, my voice a whisper among sobs. It's our daughter's name, Daniel. Your mother put it up. I thought you'd be here. He scoffed, his anger unyielding. I was working, Erica. Something you'd know nothing about anymore. With that, he stormed off to the bedroom, leaving me alone, drowning in a sea of pink and tears. The next morning was as if the night before had never happened. Daniel left for work without a word, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. I sat there, in the aftermath of what was supposed to be a celebration, feeling more alone than ever. Linda came by later, her face falling as she took in the scene and my red-rimmed eyes. He didn't make it, did he? It wasn't a question. It was an acknowledgement of a painful truth. I shook my head, unable to find the words. She sighed, her disappointment in her son palpable. I'll talk to him, Erica. This isn't right. But I knew deep down that no amount of talking would fix what was broken. Daniel had drifted so far from us, from me, that I wasn't sure he could find his way back. The day our daughter, Sophia, came into the world, it was just me and the buzz of my phone. I texted Daniel right after she was born, a simple message bursting with the biggest news. You're a dad. Sophia's here. But all I got back was silence, even though I saw he'd read the message. It was like shouting into a void, expecting an echo that never comes. Leaving the hospital, my in-laws were the ones by my side, not Daniel. They were angels, honestly, helping with everything from the car seat to setting up a little nest for Sophia back at home. You just focus on being a mom, Erica. We've got the rest. Linda, my mother-in-law, assured me with a warm smile that made things a little less heavy. When Daniel finally did show up, days later, his awkwardness around Sophia was like a wall between us. I don't think I should hold her. I might do it wrong, hurt her or something, he muttered, staring at his own daughter like she was a stranger. I tried to keep the peace, keep things light. It's not rocket science, Daniel. You won't break her. Here, just support her head, I said, gently offering our daughter to him. But he just backed away, shaking his head. Nah, better not. I'm all thumbs, remember? His attempt at a joke fell flat, leaving a sour taste. It was clear it wasn't just clumsiness holding him back, he didn't want to hold her, be near her. Things didn't get better. Nights were the hardest. Sophia, like any newborn, kept us up at all hours. But instead of pulling together, Daniel pulled away. One night, after a particularly rough round of crying, he announced, I can't do this. I need sleep for work. I'll be in the spare room. Just like that, then? You're bailing on us? I couldn't hide the bitterness in my voice, holding Sophia close, feeling more alone than ever. It's not like that, Erica. I need to function, alright? And with that, he left our room, the gap between us growing wider with every step he took away. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel's visits to our bedroom became less and less frequent, until they stopped altogether. Our conversations were brief, functional, avoiding the elephant in the room, his absence, his detachment, and the growing distance between us not just as parents, but as a couple. One evening, I tried again, hoping to bridge the gap, for Sophia's sake. She's changing every day, Daniel. Doesn't that mean anything to you? I asked, hoping for something, anything, that showed he cared. He looked tired, worn down, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes when he glanced at Sophia. Of course, it does, Erica. I'm just not cut out for the baby stage, I guess. It's not a stage, Daniel. It's our life now, I replied, feeling the weight of our new reality pressing down on us both. Life with a newborn was no joke. Sophia was an angel by day, but turned into a party animal by night, crying and fussing till the sun came up. I was running on empty, looking more like a walking ghost than a new mom. Self-care was a distant memory, and all I dreamt about was sleep. One evening, as the clock ticked past our usual dinner time, I realized I hadn't even thought about cooking. Daniel came home, tired and hungry, to find the kitchen empty and me, half asleep with Sophia in my arms. "What's this? Where's dinner?" he barked, his voice echoing off the walls, filled with frustration. I blinked back, tears, exhaustion making it hard to form a coherent response. I didn't get to it. Sophia was up all night, and what? You're home all day, Erica. How hard can it be to throw something together? His outburst cut deep, each word a reminder of how far we'd drifted from each other. This became our new normal, Daniel complaining about the lack of cooked meals, the untidy house, and how I was always too tired. His words stung, leaving me feeling inadequate and alone. One day, after a particularly harsh criticism, I reached out to Linda, spilling everything that had been happening. "Daniel just doesn't understand. I'm trying, but it's never enough," I confessed over the phone, the dam of my emotions breaking. "Oh, honey," Linda's voice was a mix of anger and sympathy. "He has no right to speak to you like that. You're doing your best. I'll have a word with him. And don't you worry, I'll help you out with the dinners." True to her word, Linda started dropping off meals for us, making sure Daniel didn't catch on. It was our little secret, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. "Thank you, Linda. I don't know what I'd do without you," I said one evening as she handed me a casserole, her presence a comforting reminder that I wasn't in this alone. "Don't mention it, dear. Your family. And it's high time Daniel remembered that too," Linda replied, her tone firm, promising change. Her help was a band-aid on a bullet wound, though. Daniel's temper flared over trivial things, his patience thinning more each day. The meals may have been sorted, but the underlying issues, the lack of understanding and support, remained. One night, as Daniel complained about the laundry not being done, I couldn't hold back any longer. "I'm not Superwoman, Daniel. I'm doing the best I can. Why can't you see that?" I yelled back, my voice shaky with pent-up frustration and fatigue. He stared at me, his expression a mix of surprise and annoyance. "Well, maybe if you managed your time better." "Managed my time better?" I interrupted, incredulous. "I'm trying to keep our daughter happy and healthy, on no sleep, with no help from you. What more do you want from me?" Our argument spiraled from there, a harsh exchange of words and accusations. It was clear that something had to give. Linda's intervention was a temporary fix, but Daniel and I were on the brink, our marriage strained to breaking point by resentment and misunderstanding. That evening, everything came to a head in a way I never expected. Daniel stormed in, his face thunderous, while I was setting the table with the food Linda had brought over. The tension in the air was thick, almost suffocating. Without even tasting the food, Daniel swept the plates off the table, shattering them against the floor. "I can't eat this crap. It's tasteless," he yelled, his anger palpable. I stood there, stunned into silence, my heart pounding in my chest. Before I could muster a response, Linda emerged from Sophia's room, having heard the commotion. "What on earth is going on here? Why did you dump my food on the floor?" she demanded, her eyes darting between the mess on the floor and her son's furious face. Daniel, caught off guard by his mother's sudden appearance, stammered, "I thought Erica made this. It's awful." Linda's face turned red, not with embarrassment but with anger. "You thought Erica made this? And that gives you the right to act like a child, throwing food around?" She stepped closer to him, her voice rising. "Do you have any idea how hard she's working, caring for your daughter all day and night? When was the last time you acknowledged that, huh?" Daniel looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him up. "Mom, No, Daniel." Linda cut him off sharply. "You need to hear this. Erica's doing the best she can under tough circumstances. And instead of supporting her, you criticize and belittle her efforts. Shame on you." Daniel's eyes lowered, the fight going out of him. He mumbled an apology to his mother, but Linda was quick to correct him. "You owe your apology to Erica, not me. And you know what? You need to spend a day in her shoes. Maybe then you'll understand." The silence that followed was heavy, charged with unspoken truths and realizations. Daniel nodded slowly, the reality of his actions beginning to sink in. "I'm sorry, Erica. I didn't realize." Linda's plan was simple, yet daunting. Daniel would take over all my duties for a day, caring for Sophia without any help unless it was absolutely necessary. I was skeptical, but desperate for a breakthrough. After Linda's departure, the air was still thick with tension, but there was a newfound resolve between us. "So, we're doing this, huh?" I asked, half doubting, half hopeful. "You're going to take a crack at my day today?" Daniel nodded, the weight of his recent realizations evident in his posture. "Yeah, I need to see for myself. How hard can it be, right?" There was a hint of his old, cocky humor, but it was laced with apprehension. "Okay, but you're on your own, remember? I'm just a call away, but only if you really need it," I reminded him, laying out Sophia's schedule, her feeds, her naps, everything on paper. Spending the day with Linda was a breath of fresh air, literally and figuratively. We shopped, laughed, and for a few hours, I was just me again, not just a mom or a tired wife. Coming home, I was greeted by the sight of Daniel, who looked like he'd been through a war zone. His hair was a mess, there were stains on his shirt, and the living room looked like a toy bomb had exploded. "Erica," he breathed out, relief and something else, maybe respect, coloring his tone. He wrapped me in an exhausted embrace. "I'm sorry for everything. This was the hardest day of my life." I couldn't help but laugh, the tension of the past weeks melting away. "Oh, really? And here I thought it was just me not managing my time well," I teased, but gently, seeing the genuine remorse in his eyes. He kissed my hands, an act so tender it made my heart swell. "Please, don't leave me alone with her for that long again. I had no idea, everything you do. It's unbelievable." After that day, things started to shift between us. It was like we finally found our rhythm again, understanding and appreciating each other in ways we'd forgotten. He got it now, how relentless and exhausting it was to care for Sophia, and he stepped up, big time. "Hey, why don't you take the afternoon off?" he'd suggest on a Saturday, seeing the fatigue in my eyes. "Go hit the shops or get your nails done. I've got Sophia." Linda and we became thick as thieves. She wasn't just my mother-in-law anymore, she was my confidant, my support system. "You've done wonders for him, you know." For both of them, she'd tell me, and I could see the pride in her eyes. One evening, as we sat down after putting Sophia to bed, Daniel turned to me, his hand finding mine across the couch. I was thinking, maybe it's time for you to focus on what you want again. You've been talking about going back to work, right? I nodded, surprised. Yeah, but I didn't want to just spring it on you. We've just gotten back on track. He squeezed my hand, his smile reassuring. We're a team, remember? I've seen how much you've sacrificed, how hard you've worked to keep our little world spinning. It's my turn to support you now. The relief and love I felt in that moment was overwhelming. I've missed my work, but I was scared it would be too much for us to handle. We'll make it work. Just like we always do. Together, he said, the determination in his voice matching the resolve in my heart. And so, I started looking into going back to work, energized by the prospect of reclaiming a piece of myself that I'd put aside. Daniel and we found our balance, sharing the load of parenting and household duties, supporting each other's dreams and ambitions. My name's Sarah, 51 years young, or old, depending on the kind of day I'm having. If you're expecting a tale of whimsy or a life that's been anything but ordinary, you might as well grab a seat because it's been one heck of a ride. Let's start with the heart of my world, Emily. My girl, my everything. Raising her on my lonesome wasn't part of the dream, you know? Her dad decided a fresh start was in order, across the globe, no less, leaving us high and dry. That man swapped us out like last season's wardrobe, and before I knew it, he had himself a shiny new family. So, there it was, just me and Em against the world. My days? They blurred into one long shift, juggling jobs like a circus act. The diner by day, the bar by night, and on good days, a bit of cleaning work squeezed in between. Sleep was a luxury, a fleeting visitor between shifts. But seeing Emily smile, hearing her laugh, that was the real paycheck. But Em, bless her, she's 23 and still figuring out life's big puzzle. Jobs? She's had more than a few, but none stuck. It's the boss, Ma, he's a real piece of work. Or, I can't deal with customers, they're all insane. Excuses as colorful as a painter's palette. Each job ended with her back on our couch, phone in one hand, remote in the other. And me? I just couldn't stay mad at her. It's alright, Em. Something better will come along, I'd say, hiding the worry gnawing at my gut. Because that's what you do when you love someone, you wear the world's troubles so they don't have to. One particularly rough day, after a double shift that had me more bone than flesh, I came home to find Emily sprawled on the sofa, a mess of job application forms scattered around like confetti. Hey, Ma, she greeted without looking up, her attention glued to the TV screen. Hey, kiddo. Anything bite today? I asked, shedding my coat and the weight of the day. She shrugged, a gesture I knew all too well. Nah, it's all crap. Why bother? They don't want to pay a living wage anyway. I sighed, a mix of exhaustion and frustration brewing. Em, we talked about this. You gotta start somewhere, right? Can't be picky in times like these. Whatever, Ma. It's easy for you to say. You're used to busting your back for peanuts, she fired back, her words sharp like a knife. That stung. Not gonna lie. But anger? It never had a place in our home. I bit back the retort simmering on my tongue and instead, forced a smile. Maybe so, kiddo. But those peanuts kept a roof over our heads and food on the table. Someday, you'll understand that. Emily rolled her eyes, the universal sign of young adult disdain. Sure, Ma. I'm hitting the sack. Night. Watching her disappear into her room, a part of me ached. Ached for her to see the world not as an adversary, but as a challenge to be met head-on. Yet, there I was, picking up the scattered forms, tidying up the living remnants of her latest defeat. The thing about life is, just when you think you've got it all figured out, it throws you a curveball. And not the kind you can hit out of the park. No, I'm talking about the kind that hits you square in the chest and leaves you gasping for air. That's exactly what happened the day Emily decided to drop her little bombshell. It was a Tuesday, not that it matters, but I remember because Tuesdays were meatloaf nights. I was in the kitchen, elbows deep in ground beef, when Emily waltzed in, her face all lit up like a Christmas tree. Behind her trailed Alex, a guy I'd seen maybe once or twice before. I didn't have anything against him, but let's just say he wouldn't be my first pick for a son-in-law. Not that I was thinking about that kind of stuff, until I had to. "Ma, guess what?" Emily chirped, bouncing on her heels. I glanced over, eyebrow raised. "You finally decided to clean your room?" She rolled her eyes, a grin spreading across her face. "Funny, Ma." "No, better. Alex and I got married. You know that feeling when your heart skips a beat?" Yeah, mine skipped, tripped, and fell flat on its face. "Married?" I echoed, my voice sounding like it belonged to someone else. Alex stepped forward, a sheepish smile plastered on his face. "Yeah, Mrs. S, we eloped last weekend. Surprise?" Surprise was an understatement. I felt like I'd been sucker punched. "Eloped?" I repeated, still processing. "And you're just telling me now?" Emily's excitement dimmed a bit, replaced by a defensive edge. "I knew you'd react like this, Ma. That's why we didn't tell you before. But it's done. And we're happy, aren't we, Alex?" Alex nodded, slipping an arm around her. "Yeah, totally happy." I put down the mixing spoon, wiping my hands on my apron. This was a conversation that needed my full attention. "And where, pray tell, do you plan on living?" I asked, already dreading the answer. "Well, here," Emily said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. "With you, Ma. Where else?" Where else indeed. I took a deep breath, trying to tamp down the rising tide of frustration. "Emily, honey, you're married now. Don't you think it's time you, I don't know, started your own life? Somewhere that's not here?" Her face fell. "Ma, you know we can't afford that. Alex's job doesn't pay much, and I'm still looking." Looking. Right. The eternal job hunter. I looked from her to Alex, who seemed content to let Emily do the talking. Something about the set of his jaw irked me, the way he seemed to assume this was all fine and dandy. "Look," I started, trying to keep my voice even. "I love you, Emily. You know I do. But this isn't what I wanted for you. For either of us." Emily's response was swift and sharp. "What, Ma? You didn't want me to be happy? Is that it?" "No, of course not," I countered, feeling the conversation slip away from me. I thought you'd want more. That you'd strive for more." "More what, Ma? More work? More nights alone?" "Thanks, but I'll pass on that." The conversation spiraled from there, each word more heated than the last. Alex tried to chime in, but he might as well have been a fly buzzing around a hurricane. This was between me and my daughter, and it was clear neither of us was going to budge. In the end, we called a truce, but the air remained thick with unsaid things. Alex moved in the next day, his belongings taking up space in a home that suddenly felt too small. I retreated into myself, wondering where I'd gone wrong, how my little girl had grown so far from the dreams I'd had for her. The day I found out about the cancer was the day my world flipped on its head. I'd been feeling off for a while, but cancer? That word felt like a freight train hitting me at full speed. The doctor was gentle about it, but the words still stung. "It's treatable," he said. "But you'll need to focus on your health, maybe even take some time off work." Work. My lifeline, the thing that kept us afloat all these years, and now I was being told to step back from it. I headed home, the weight of the diagnosis crushing me. The house was quiet when I got in, too quiet. Emily was in her room, probably lost in her phone, and Alex was Alex, doing whatever it was that he did. I needed them, needed their support, so I called them both to the living room. "Guys, we need to talk," I started, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to sound strong. Emily looked up, her eyes wide. "What's up, Ma? You look like hell." I sighed, not sure how to say the words. "I've got cancer," I blurted out, the words feeling alien and heavy on my tongue. There was a moment of silence, and then Emily's face changed, but not in the way I'd hoped. Cancer? But, what does that mean, for, us? Her question caught me off guard. Well, it means I'll be going through treatment, and I had to quit my job to focus on getting better. The room went cold. Alex, who'd been silent until now, finally spoke up. Quit your job? How are we supposed to live, then? My job barely covers my stuff. I stared at them, disbelief washing over me. This was their concern? Not my health, not the battle I was about to face, but their comfort? Emily chimed in, her tone sharp. Yeah, Ma, how could you not think about us? What are we supposed to do now? The disappointment hit me like a second diagnosis. My own daughter, the girl I'd raised, sacrificed for, was more worried about her financial comfort than my fight for life. I thought you'd be worried about me, about what I'm going through, I said, my voice breaking. Well, of course, we're worried, Emily said, her voice softening just a touch. But we've got to be practical here. You can't just quit and expect everything to be okay. Alex nodded in agreement. Yeah, it's not just about you anymore. We've got to think about the future. The future. Their future apparently didn't include the possibility of me not being in it. I realized then what I'd done, or rather, what I hadn't done. I'd raised a daughter who saw me not as a person fighting for her life, but as a means to an end, a financial safety net. After weeks of harsh treatments, the hospital finally sent me home. I was a shell of my former self, hollowed out by radiation and chemotherapy, clinging to the hope that within the familiar walls of my home, I might find some solace, some shred of normalcy. But what greeted me was far from the support and care I had envisioned. The air at home had shifted, it was thick with tension, heavy with unspoken resentments. My daughter, Emily, and her husband, Alex, had taken to treating me more like an inconvenient guest than family. Their patience wore thin at the slightest provocation, their words sharp and cutting. One day, trying to make myself a cup of tea, my hands betrayed me, trembling from the weakness that had become my constant companion. The mug slipped, shattering on the floor with a sound that seemed to echo my own fragility. The crash brought Emily storming into the kitchen. Seriously, Ma? Can't you do anything right? Look at this mess. Her words were like daggers, and I stood there, mute, the shards of the broken mug mirroring the pieces of my heart. I'm sorry, Em. I didn't mean to. My apology was cut short by Alex's voice, barely a whisper yet loud enough to carry his disdain. How tired you are, you sick old woman. Their words, sharp and unforgiving, were a far cry from the care I had hoped for, the love I thought we shared. Each day was a battle, not against the cancer that ravaged my body, but against the coldness that had taken root in my own home. I moved through the days and a days, my every action, every sound, seemingly an annoyance to them. Asking for help became an exercise in humiliation. Em, could you help me up? I'd ask, reaching out for support. The response was always the same, a huff of irritation, a reminder of her own priorities. And so there are plenty of things to do, and you too, she'd snap, leaving me to fend for myself. Night after night, I cried myself to sleep, the sound of my sobs a solitary lament in the silence of the house. I was a burden, a nuisance in my own home, my presence an unwelcome reminder of the fragility of life. Due to constant stress, my health deteriorated, and I was admitted to the room again. After weeks of silence and solitude in the hospital, the last person I expected to see was Emily. Her visits had become as rare as a cool breeze in a heat wave, and yet, there she was, standing at the foot of my hospital bed, looking every bit as uncomfortable as I felt surprised. Hey, Ma, she started, avoiding my gaze. How you feeling? The casualness of her question, as if she'd been by my side all along, stung. Been better, I replied, my voice raspy from disuse. What brings you here, Em? Finally decided to check on your old mother? She fidgeted, looking anywhere but at me. Yeah, well, there's something we need to talk about. It's about the house. The house. My sanctuary, the only legacy my grandmother left me, and our only real home. A lump formed in my throat. What about it? Emily finally met my gaze, her eyes hard. Alex and we've been talking, and we think it's best if you transfer the house to us. Legally, I mean. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Transfer the house? To you and Alex? Why on earth would I do that? She crossed her arms, her discomfort replaced by defiance. Because, Ma, it's practical. Alex is sick of living there, like he's some sort of freeloader. We want to own it, make it ours. It's not like you're going to be around forever, anyway. Her words felt like a slap. The audacity, the sheer insensitivity. My own daughter, viewing my home, my life, as nothing more than a transaction to secure her future comfort. You think I'm just going to hand over everything because your husband doesn't like feeling like a guest? In my own house? It's not just that, Ma. It makes sense. You're here, sick, and who knows for how long. We're thinking about the future. The future? I echoed, incredulous. And what about my future, Emily? Did you ever stop to think about that? Or is it just about what you and Alex want? She sighed, a sound of frustration and impatience. You're being unreasonable, Ma. We're just trying to be practical here. Practical? I shot back, anger and hurt swirling inside me. You're talking about my home like it's a prize to be won. I worked hard for that house, kept it through everything. And you, my own daughter, you come here, not to see how I'm doing, not to offer comfort or support, but to ask me to give up my home? For what? So you can feel more secure in your marriage? Emily looked away. I thought you'd understand, Ma. But I can see you're just too selfish to see the bigger picture. Selfish? The accusation was a bitter pill to swallow. My whole life, I'd given everything to Emily, sacrificed so much, and now, in my time of need, this was how she saw me? Understanding has nothing to do with it, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. This is about respect, about family. And right now, I don't know if I even recognize you, Emily. Without another word, she turned and left, leaving me alone with my thoughts, my pain, and a heart heavier than it had been before. Lying in the sterile silence of the hospital room, the buzzing of my phone felt like a lifeline to the outside world. When I saw it was Janice, my friend who's been in real estate since we were in high school, my heart skipped a beat. She never called without good reason. Hey, Janice. What's up? I tried to keep my voice steady, despite the dread settling in my stomach. Sarah, I don't know how to say this, but I was at the office today, and I saw a listing. It's your house, Sarah. Emily and that husband of hers are trying to sell it. The room spun. What? That can't be right. My house? Are you sure? As sure as I'm standing here. I thought it was a mistake, but I checked the documents myself. They've forged your signature, Sarah. It's listed under their names now. Anger and disbelief churned inside me. But, how could they? I never gave them any permission. This has to be illegal. It is, Sarah. You need to act fast. I knew she was right. My next call was to Mike, an old friend from college who ended up becoming a lawyer. Explaining the situation left me feeling exposed and vulnerable, but Mike's calm demeanor was a small comfort. Sarah, this is serious. We need to file for an injunction immediately to stop the sale. I'll need every piece of documentation you have on the house. We can argue forgery and undue influence, but we have to move quickly. Okay, Mike. I'll get you everything. I can't believe Emily would do this to me. To her own mother. It's unfortunate, but let's focus on protecting what's yours. I'll start the paperwork. Hang tight, Sarah. Hanging up, I was enveloped by a profound sense of betrayal. My own daughter, scheming behind my back to steal the only thing I had left from my grandmother. The thought was suffocating. Days passed in a blur of legal documents and phone calls. Mike was a godsend, navigating the legal maze with a precision that gave me hope. Meanwhile, I couldn't bring myself to confront Emily, not yet. The wound was too fresh, the betrayal too deep. For days, I interacted with Emily and Alex as if all was well, all the while coordinating with Mike to build our case. Their casualness around me, the way they dodged my gaze, only fueled my resolve. I had to protect what was rightfully mine. When Emily came to visit, feigning concern, I had to stifle a scoff. "Hey, Mom. Just checking in. How are you holding up?" Her words were hollow, and I played along. "I've been better, Em. But I'm hanging in there. How's things at home?" I prodded, curious if she'd slip up. Good. Alex and I are just, keeping busy." The evasion in her voice was palpable. The conversation danced around the elephant in the room, both of us playing our parts in a twisted performance. After she left, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sorrow for the relationship we once had. But this betrayal? It was a line crossed, and there was no turning back. Mike called later with updates. "We're all set, Sarah. You ready for this?" "More than ever, Mike. Let's do it." As I lay in my hospital bed, staring at the sterile ceiling, I couldn't help but marvel at the situation. My own daughter, plotting against me, and here I was, about to turn the tables. Released from the hospital for a bit, I have started to fulfill my plan. Janice was in on it too. She helped me set it up so I'd show up at my own house, pretending to be interested in buying it. The thought alone had my heart racing with a mix of nerves and a strange sense of excitement. I arrived at the house, dressed differently, hoping Emily and Alex wouldn't recognize me right off the bat. The moment they opened the door, their faces went from eager to sell to outright horror. It was almost comical, seeing them scramble to make sense of what was happening. "Mom? What are you doing here?" Emily stammered, her face pale. "Thought I'd take a look at my own house, considering it's up for sale and all." "Nice listing, by the way," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Alex, ever the smooth talker, tried to recover. "Sarah, look, this is just a big misunderstanding. Let's talk about this." "Misunderstanding?" I scoffed. "Forging my signature and trying to sell my house is a bit more than that, don't you think?" Without another word, I stepped outside and called the police. As I explained the situation, I watched Emily and Alex from the window, their expressions a mix of fear and disbelief. When the police arrived, Emily and Alex were taken away in handcuffs. Their pleas and cries echoed down the street, but my heart was hardened against them. The betrayal was too deep, the wound too fresh. After the dust settled, the quiet in my house was both eerie and soothing. It was just me now, alone with the echoes of a life that once was. The days melded into one another as I focused on my health, on healing not just my body, but my battered heart as well. Miraculously, my health began to turn a corner. The cancer that once seemed like a death sentence slowly retreated into the shadows, giving me a new lease on life. The trial of Emily and Alex was a spectacle, one I attended with a heavy heart. Watching them, so small and defeated in the courtroom, stirred something in me, but it wasn't enough to overcome the betrayal. They pleaded, tears streaming down their faces, begging for my forgiveness. But forgiveness was a river that had run dry. The court handed down a modest sentence for their crimes, but no punishment could right the wrongs they'd done. Word got around, as it always does in small towns. Some folks shook their heads, sking at my hard-heartedness, unable to understand how I could turn my back on my own flesh and blood. But most knew the pain of betrayal, and they stood by me, offering nods of understanding and silent support. It's funny, really, how something so earth-shattering can shift your perspective. I used to care so much about what people thought, about being the perfect mother, the perfect neighbor. But life has a way of teaching you that perfection is a facade, and approval is a fickle friend. One afternoon, as I sat on my porch, basking in the solitude, Janice stopped by, her presence a welcome break in the monotony. "Sarah, you're looking better every day," she said, taking the seat beside me. I smiled, a genuine smile that reached deep into my weary soul. "Feeling it, too. It's funny how peace can heal you in ways medicine can't." Janice nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "Not everyone agrees with your choices, you know. But I think you're one of the bravest people I know." I let out a chuckle, a sound tinged with sadness and wisdom born of pain. "Brave? No, I wouldn't say that. Just tired. Tired of bending until I break. Now, I'm just living for me, and if that's brave, then so be it." Janice squeezed my hand, a silent show of solidarity. "Living for yourself is all any of us can do, Sarah. And for what it's worth, I think you're doing a damn fine job at it." As she left, her words lingered in the air like a benediction. I turned my face to the sky, letting the warmth of the sun seep into my bones. For the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of something like hope, like joy. So, I live. I live for the quiet mornings and the peaceful nights. I live for the friends who stood by me and for the strength I found in solitude. I live with the knowledge that not everyone will understand my journey, and that's okay. Because at the end of the day, it's my journey, and mine alone. My life as a cardiologist was pretty straightforward until Alex walked into my clinic. That day changed everything. I remember it was a busy Tuesday morning, and I was halfway through my coffee when he came in, looking a bit nervous but with a smile that could light up the room. "Good morning, Dr. Smith," he greeted, extending his hand. "I'm Alex. Here for the 10 a.m. appointment." I shook his hand, noting the firm grip. "Nice to meet you, Alex. Please, have a seat. What brings you in today?" He laughed, a bit awkwardly, and said, "Well, I've been getting these weird chest pains." "Probably nothing, but my buddy dared me to get it checked out, said I'm getting old." I couldn't help but smile. "Let's not jump to conclusions. We'll run some tests and see what's up. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?" 32, he replied, with a grin. "But according to my friend, that's ancient." The consultation went smoothly. Alex was easy to talk to, and he had a way of making the mundane seem interesting. After the tests, I assured him there was nothing serious, just stress-related. He seemed relieved but lingered a bit longer than necessary. "So, Dr. Smith, since I'm all healthy and not ancient yet, would you consider having dinner with me? As a thank you for the peace of mind?" His tone was playful, but I could tell he was serious. I hesitated, not used to mixing work with my personal life. "I'm not sure that's a good idea, Alex. I try to keep professional boundaries." He leaned in, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "Come on, it's just dinner. No strings attached. I promise I'm a decent cook, and I make killer lasagna." I laughed, surprised by his persistence. "All right, lasagna does sound tempting. But just dinner, okay?" "Deal," he exclaimed, looking victorious. In the months that followed, Alex was relentless in his pursuit. He'd show up at my clinic with coffee just the way I liked it or surprise me with tickets to a concert of a band I mentioned in passing. His charm was undeniable, and his attention, intoxicating. 6 months into our whirlwind romance, he popped the question in the most Alex way possible, during a hike, out of breath, and with a ring that was slightly too big. "Erica, I'm probably going to regret this tomorrow when my muscles are screaming, but I can't wait any longer. Will you marry me?" he asked, panting and kneeling on one knee. I laughed, tears in my eyes, both from the joy and the absurdity of the moment. "Yes, Alex, I'll marry you. But only if you promise to carry me back down this trail." That was the beginning of our adventure together. Little did I know, the real challenge was just around the corner. Meeting his mother, Elizabeth, for the first time was when I realized our journey wouldn't be as smooth as I had hoped. She was the epitome of strict and domineering, with a love for her son that bordered on obsession. Our first meeting was over dinner at their family home. Elizabeth eyed me like a hawk, sizing me up as if I were an adversary rather than a potential family member. The tension was palpable, and Alex seemed to shrink a bit under his mother's gaze. "So, Erica, Alex tells me you're a cardiologist. That must be demanding," Elizabeth said, her tone polite but cold. "Yes, it is, but I love my job. It's rewarding to help people," I replied, trying to keep the conversation light. "And you plan to continue working after the wedding?" Her question felt more like an interrogation. I nodded, suddenly feeling defensive. "Yes, I've worked hard to get where I am. I don't see why getting married should change that." Elizabeth's lips thinned into a disapproving line. "I see. Well, I just hope you remember that your first duty is to your husband and future family, not your career." That night, Alex and I had a long talk. He assured me that we'd face whatever came our way together, including his mother's disapproval. I wanted to believe him, but deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. Elizabeth wasn't the type to back down, and neither was I. After the wedding, Alex and I settled into our routine. Life was good, or so I thought, until Elizabeth, my mother-in-law, decided it was her divine mission to fix our lives. Her surprise visits became a regular annoyance, each one marked by her critical eye scanning our apartment like a drill sergeant inspecting a barracks. One Saturday, as Alex and I were enjoying a rare lazy morning, the doorbell rang. I glanced at the clock, 8 a.m., and groaned. Alex shot me a knowing look before heading to the door. Sure enough, Elizabeth barged in, her eyes immediately zeroing in on the unwashed dishes from last night's dinner. "Good morning, Elizabeth," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "To what do we owe the pleasure?" She sniffed, ignoring my question. "You know, Erica, a clean home is a happy home. It's not healthy to live in such disarray." Alex, ever the peacemaker, chimed in. "Mom, we were just about to clean up. Why don't you sit down, and I'll make you some coffee?" But Elizabeth was on a roll, her gaze now fixed on the living room. "And that couch. It's all wrong for the space. Have you considered moving it against the other wall? And those curtains. Dear, they do nothing for the room." I bit my tongue, counting to 10 in my head. Alex, sensing my growing irritation, tried to steer his mother towards the kitchen. "Mom, seriously, the coffee. Let's go." As they disappeared into the kitchen, I followed, not ready to let Elizabeth have free rein in my apartment. The criticism didn't stop at the decor. Next, she launched into our dietary habits when she noticed the takeout boxes in the trash. "Eating out again? You know, Erica, a wife should take care of her husband's health. Home-cooked meals are the cornerstone of a happy marriage." That did it. I could handle the digs at my cleaning and decorating, but questioning my role as a wife was a step too far. "Elizabeth, I appreciate your concern, but Alex and I are quite happy with our arrangement. We both work long hours, and sometimes, takeout is just easier." She tooted, shaking her head. "I just don't understand your generation. When I was your age, I had a home-cooked meal on the table every night for my husband and son." Alex, bless him, jumped to my defense. "Mom, times have changed. Erica's not just a housewife. She's a brilliant cardiologist, and I'm fully capable of cooking or ordering pizza if it comes to it." The conversation was going nowhere, and Elizabeth's presence was starting to suffocate me. I excused myself, claiming a sudden headache, and retreated to our bedroom, leaving Alex to handle his mother. One day, the invasion reached a new level. Alex and I had planned a weekend getaway, just the two of us, to recharge. We returned home to find our apartment spotless, but not in the way we left it. Furniture was rearranged, new curtains hung in the living room, and our bedroom looked like it had been ripped out of a home decor magazine. "What the?" I started, my eyes wide as I took in the changes. Alex was equally shocked. Did we get robbed by an interior decorator? Before we could process everything, Alex's phone rang. It was Elizabeth, sounding far too pleased with herself. Did you notice the changes? I couldn't stand to see your apartment in such a state. You'll thank me later. Alex's face turned red, his usual calm demeanor slipping. Mom, why would you think this is okay? You can't just come in and rearrange our lives. Her response was as infuriating as her actions. I'm just trying to help. It's clear Erica doesn't know the first thing about keeping a home. Someone had to step in. That was the last straw. Alex, usually the one to smooth things over, was livid. He made it clear to his mother that her help was not welcome and that she was to call before visiting in the future. The news of the pregnancy came as a surprise. Not an unpleasant one, but a surprise nonetheless. I remember staring at the test, my heart racing, until Alex found me in the bathroom, my face probably a picture of shock and awe. What's up, babe? You look like you've seen a ghost, he said, leaning against the doorway with that easy smile of his. I handed him the test without a word, watching as his expression shifted from curiosity to outright joy. Seriously? We're gonna have a baby? He whooped, lifting me off the ground in a tight hug. Yeah, seems like it. I managed, the reality of it all beginning to sink in. We decided to tell Elizabeth and Alex's dad, Robert, over dinner at their place. Predictably, Elizabeth's reaction was intense. A baby? Oh, my goodness, this is wonderful news. Finally, I'm going to be a grandmother. Her excitement was genuine, and for a moment, I saw a softer side to her. Robert was equally thrilled, beaming with pride. Congratulations, you too. This is fantastic news. But, of course, Elizabeth couldn't let the moment pass without slipping in her 2 cents. Erica, you'll have to be very careful now. Pregnancy isn't easy, and with your job. Well, I just hope you're planning to take it easy. I bristled at the comment, ready to defend my ability to work and be pregnant, but Alex squeezed my hand under the table, a silent plea to let it go for the night. The pregnancy wasn't easy, as Elizabeth had so eagerly predicted. My peanut allergy, always a nuisance, became a constant threat, requiring me to be extra vigilant. Elizabeth, ever the helpful in-law, had plenty to say about that too. During one particularly difficult week, when I was feeling run down and tired from juggling work and pregnancy, Elizabeth dropped by unannounced, as was her habit. Erica, you look exhausted. Are you sure you should still be working? A woman in your condition needs to rest, she clucked, eyeing me like I was a fragile piece of china. I sighed, not in the mood for a lecture. Elizabeth, I'm fine. My doctor says it's okay to work, and I need to stay active. But your allergies, dear. It's just not safe. What if something happens? You're not just responsible for yourself now, she pressed, her tone a mix of concern and criticism. Alex came to my rescue, walking into the room with perfect timing. Mom, Erica's a doctor. She knows what she's doing. Let's not stress her out more, okay? Elizabeth huffed, clearly not convinced, but dropped the subject. Her concern was touching, in a way, but suffocating. I was a cardiologist, for crying out loud. I knew how to take care of myself and my baby. When we found out we were having a girl, Elizabeth's excitement reached new heights. A granddaughter. Oh, Alex, we must start planning the baby shower immediately. And the nursery. Erica, have you thought about the nursery? After Emily was born, I took a year off to be with her, which was amazing, but also isolating. I missed my work, my colleagues, and the part of me that thrived on helping others. So, I decided it was time to go back, at least part-time, which meant we needed a nanny. The plan seemed simple enough until Elizabeth caught wind of it. She showed up unannounced, as was her way, her face stormy the moment I opened the door. A nanny? Really, Erica? You're going to let a stranger raise our Emily? She practically spat the words out, her disdain for the idea palpable. I sighed, bracing myself for the inevitable confrontation. Elizabeth, it's not like that. I'm going back to work part-time. We need someone to watch Emily, and, And what? I'm not good enough to watch my own granddaughter. She cut in, her voice rising with each word. It wasn't that she wasn't good enough, it was just that. Well, Elizabeth and I had our differences, and the thought of dealing with her criticisms on a daily basis made my stomach turn. But she was family, and deep down, I hoped this might bridge the gap between us. Look, if you want to help, that would be great. But we're going to do this my way. I can't have you undermining me at every turn, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Elizabeth's eyes narrowed, but after a moment, she nodded. Fine. But I expect to be paid like any other nanny. That should have been my first red flag. Paying Elizabeth felt weird, but if it kept the peace, I was willing to try it. However, peace was the last thing it brought. Every day, I'd come home to a litany of complaints. You're out of laundry detergent again, or, I had to throw out that stale bread. Don't you ever clean out your pantry? It was relentless. Alex tried to mediate, bless him, but it was like trying to stop a hurricane with a fence. One day, I'd had enough. I walked in to find Elizabeth berating me for the tasteless dinner I'd prepared for Alex the night before. You can't feed a child, let alone a grown man, with this slop. That was it. I snapped. Elizabeth, I'm done. I appreciate your help, but this isn't working. You need to stop coming over. Her face went from angry to furious. Fine. See how well you manage without me. She slammed the door on her way out, leaving me shaking but strangely relieved. Alex came home to find me sitting at the kitchen table, a mix of emotions swirling inside me. She left, I said, simply. He sighed, wrapping his arms around me. I'm sorry, Erica. I know she's my mom, but you're my wife. We'll figure this out together. And that was that. Elizabeth's reign as the nanny from hell was over, and despite the drama, a weight had been lifted. We found a lovely local girl to help with Emily, and life settled into a new, happier rhythm. The day after our big blow-up, Elizabeth called me as if nothing had happened. Erica, I've been thinking, we got off on the wrong foot yesterday. I baked a pie. Thought I'd come over, maybe we can start fresh? I was on edge, still reeling from our last encounter. The last thing I wanted was to see her, but the constant fighting was draining. Maybe this pie was her olive branch. Alright, Elizabeth. Let's try this again, I sighed, hoping for the best, but expecting the worst. She showed up 2 hours later, pie in hand, smiling as if we were old friends. Here, I made your favorite. Let's put all that unpleasantness behind us, shall we? I forced a smile, taking the pie. Thanks, Elizabeth. That's very kind of you. Just then, my phone rang. Work needed me, urgently. My heart sank. I couldn't leave Emily alone, not with things so strained between Elizabeth and me. Actually, Elizabeth, I just got called into the clinic. Would you mind watching Emily for a bit? I asked, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. Her eyes lit up, a stark contrast to the dread filling my stomach. Of course, dear. Go, don't worry about a thing. We'll have a grand time. I hesitated, looking at Emily, then back at Elizabeth. There was no choice. Okay, I'll be as quick as I can. Thank you, Elizabeth, I said, rushing to gather my things and head out the door. Driving to work, my mind wasn't on the emergency waiting for me, but on Emily and Elizabeth. The uneasy truce felt fragile, and I couldn't shake the feeling of dread about leaving them together. Every minute dragged on, my thoughts constantly drifting back to how Emily was doing, hoping that Elizabeth's offer to make amends was genuine and not just another tactic to assert her control. The day was dragging on, my mind a constant cycle of worry about Emily and trying to focus on work, when my phone rang. It was Elizabeth, panic-edging every word as she practically yelled, Erica. Emily, she can't breathe properly. You have to do something. My heart plummeted. Calm down, Elizabeth. Tell me exactly what's happening, I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the rising panic. She's wheezing and her face is all puffed up. What do I do? Elizabeth's voice cracked, a mix of fear and confusion bleeding through. I knew immediately what was happening. Listen to me very carefully. Go to the kitchen, second drawer. There's an EpiPen. Use it now. I'm calling 911 and I'm on my way. Hanging up, I dialed 911, explaining the situation as best as I could while grabbing my keys and rushing out the door. My mind raced, thoughts jumbled. How did this happen? We were so careful with food. I made it home in record time, finding the paramedics already there, attending to Emily. The relief that washed over me when I saw her breathing was better, albeit still strained, was indescribable. Elizabeth was a mess, pacing back and forth, her earlier accusations forgotten in the face of the emergency. I don't know how this happened, Erica. I swear, we didn't eat anything unusual, she said, her voice trembling. I didn't have time to respond, my focus solely on Emily as the paramedics worked. They decided to take her to the clinic for further observation, not wanting to take any chances. I nodded, understanding and grateful for their thoroughness. At the clinic, they confirmed it was anaphylactic shock, likely from a food allergen. I couldn't wrap my head around it. We were so careful, especially with Emily's and my allergies. There must have been some cross-contamination, I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. Elizabeth was quick to defend herself. I didn't give her anything from the list you gave me. You have to believe me, Erica. I'd never put Emily in danger. I was too tired to argue, too relieved that Emily was okay to hold on to anger. We spent the rest of the day at the clinic, Emily gradually returning to her usual self, though still a bit groggy from the medication. That evening, after the longest day of our lives, Alex and I sat in the living room, holding each other, grateful for the quiet and that Emily was safe in her bed. The stress and fear had drained us both, but there was a sense of relief that it was finally over. Alex, ever the caretaker, got up to make us some tea. He spotted the pie his mom had brought over earlier on the kitchen table. Hey, you want a piece of pie Mom brought? He asked, trying to lighten the mood. No, thanks. Just tea for me, I said, not having the slightest appetite for anything, especially not that pie. He shrugged and cut himself a piece. That's when he noticed something that stopped him cold. Huh, looks like someone already had a bite. Then he took a bite, chewed thoughtfully, and his face changed. Wow, that's a strong smell of peanuts. My heart stopped. Peanuts. The reality hit me like a ton of bricks. Alex, that's it. The peanuts. Your mom, she knows I'm allergic. And Emily. I couldn't finish the sentence, the implication too horrifying to voice fully. The next day, we confronted his parents. The tension was palpable as we laid out the accusations. Alex, usually so calm, was shaking with anger. Mom, did you put peanuts in that pie? You know Erica and Emily are allergic. What were you thinking? His mother's face was a mask, but her eyes, there was something in them that chilled me. I just wanted to make a pie. I didn't think. But Alex wasn't having any of it. Didn't think? Or didn't care? You could have killed our daughter. That's when his dad stepped in, his voice thunderous. Is this true? You endangered your granddaughter? I can't believe this. I'm calling the police. And he did, right there and then. The police came, and faced with the evidence, Elizabeth didn't deny it. I just wanted Erica out of the way, she said, a statement that would haunt me forever. After everything that went down, the dust finally settled. Elizabeth was sentenced to prison, a severe punishment that kept her away for a good long while. It was a tough pill to swallow, seeing family torn apart like that, but it was necessary, for Emily's safety and our peace of mind. A few weeks after the trial and all that, Alex's dad, Robert, showed up at our door. It was the first time we'd seen him since everything happened. The man looked like he'd aged years in just a few months, weariness etched into every line on his face. He didn't waste any time, just got right to the point. Erica, Alex. I'm so sorry for what Elizabeth did. I can't even begin to. I just never thought. Alex cut him off, not unkindly. Dad, it's okay. We know you had nothing to do with it. Robert nodded, his eyes misty. I brought something for Emily. And, if it's all right with you, I'd like to see her. Missed her like crazy. Looking at Alex, we shared a silent conversation. This was his dad, Emily's granddad. Family, despite the chaos and hurt. Of course, she'd love to see you, Robert. Wouldn't you, Emmy? I said, turning to our daughter, who was eyeing the big bag of gifts with wide, curious eyes. Grandpa. Emily squealed, recognizing him instantly. The joy in Robert's eyes was unmistakable as he knelt down to hug her, handing over the gifts one by one, each wrapped with care. Later, sitting down with cups of coffee, Robert spoke up again. I've filed for divorce. Can't stay married to someone capable of, well, you know. It's hard, after all these years, but it's for the best. Alex put a hand on his father's shoulder. It's going to be okay, Dad. We're here for you. We're family. Yeah, I added, squeezing Alex's hand. We'll get through this together. And hey, Emmy's got her grandpa back. That's all that matters. Robert smiled, a genuine, relieved smile. Thank you, both of you. Means the world to me. I just want to be a part of your lives, and Emmy's. Make up for lost time. And that was our new beginning. A fresh start, not just for us, but for Robert too. Life had thrown us a curveball, but we'd caught it, and now, we were moving forward, together. My name's Hannah, and if you ask me, my life's pretty standard. Got a decent job, a husband, Mark, who's been my rock since college, and 2 kids who are the usual blend of sweet and trouble. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that normalcy is a fragile thing, especially with a brother like Alex. Alex is 8 years younger than me, the kind of guy who never really grew up. Jobs, girlfriends, you name it, he changes them like he's flipping channels on TV. And yeah, he's got this habit of hitting up me or Mom whenever his wallet's feeling too light, which is always. So, there we were, at Mom's for our usual Sunday dinner. The house smelled like roast and the kids were running around, when the door slammed open like it's trying to break free. In strolls Alex, with this girl on his arm, looking like she just walked off a beach rather than into a family gathering. Her dress was so short, I swear Mark did a double take, nearly choked on his tea. Family, meet Lisa, Alex announces, all proud like he's won an award. My fiancé. And guess what? We're gonna have a baby. The room went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Mark's coughing his lungs out, Mom's frozen with her mouth half open, and I'm just staring, thinking, here we go again. Alex, are you out of your damn mind? I couldn't help myself. You can barely take care of yourself. Lisa, hands on her hips, eyes me like I'm something she stepped in. We're very happy, thank you. And we don't need negativity, right, babe? Alex nods, slinging an arm around her. Yeah, we're doing great. Right, Mom? Mom, bless her, is trying to find her words. Congratulations. But, Alex, have you thought this through? A baby is a big responsibility. Of course, he hasn't, I muttered, earning a glare from both of them. Listen here, Hannah. Alex shot back. I don't need a lecture from you. We're gonna be fine. Right, Lisa? Lisa smirks. Absolutely. And we'll need a bit of help, obviously. Starting with living here for a while. I almost choked on my own spit. Live here? With Mom? Are you kidding? Why not? Lisa snapped. It's not like we have anywhere else to go. And it's not forever, just until Alex finds a new job. And when will that be? I couldn't stop the sarcasm. You planning on hitting the job hunt hard between gaming sessions, Alex? He just shrugged, all casual like. I'll figure it out. I always do. Mom finally spoke up, trying to smooth things over. Well, we'll make do. We always do. Right, Hannah? I looked at her, at the resignation in her eyes, and my heart sank. Yeah, Mom. We always do. Dinner was tense after that. Mark kept giving me these looks, like he was bracing for the storm he knew was coming. And me? I was just trying to wrap my head around the circus my life was about to become. After dinner, with the kids in bed and Mark helping Mom with the dishes, I cornered Alex in the living room. You can't keep doing this, you know. Dumping your problems on Mom on me. It's not fair. Alex, lounging like he owned the place, just shrugged. What do you want me to say, Hannah? Life's tough. I'm doing my best. Your best? I was fuming. Dragging a pregnant girl into this mess? Expecting everyone else to pick up your slack? Hey, Lisa yelled from the kitchen. Watch how you talk about us. I took a deep breath, counting to 10 in my head. Arguing wasn't going to solve anything. Not with Alex. Not now. Just, try to think about someone other than yourself for once, I finally said, more tired than angry. Alex just looked at me, and for a second, I thought I saw a flicker of something like guilt. But then he smiled, that carefree, reckless smile that always spelled trouble. We'll manage, sis. We always do. As I went to help with the dishes, leaving Alex to his illusions, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were all on the brink of something big. And not in a good way. But like Mom said, we'd make do. Because that's what families do, right? Even when they're about to be turned upside down by one of their own. Having Alex and Lisa move in was like inviting a hurricane into your house and hoping it'd just water the plants. From day one, the balance of our family home was thrown off. Mom tried to stay upbeat, but I could see the strain in her eyes. One morning, I dropped by to see Mom, and the scene was chaos. Dishes piled up, laundry forgotten, and Lisa lounging on the couch like she owned the place, scrolling through her phone. Alex was nowhere to be seen, probably asleep or pretending to be. Morning, Lisa, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Need help with anything? She barely glanced up. Oh, no, I'm good. Just resting. You know, for the baby. Right. The baby. I looked around at the mess. And Alex? She shrugged. Asleep, maybe? I don't keep tabs on him. Of course not. Why start now? I sighed and started picking up. Mom came in, her smile a bit too forced. Hannah, you don't have to do that. I don't mind, Mom. Can't have you dealing with all this alone. Lisa watched us, not moving an inch. You're so good to your mom, she said, and I couldn't tell if she was being sarcastic. Someone's got to be, I muttered, throwing a glance her way. She just smiled, unfazed. Later, I caught Alex in the kitchen, raiding the fridge. Nice of you to join the living, I snapped. Your fiancé's made herself right at home. He grabbed a soda, not looking at me. Yeah, well, she's pregnant. Needs to rest. And you? What's your excuse? He leaned against the counter, all casual-like. I'm looking for work, all right? It's not easy out there. Could have fooled me. Seems like your full-time job is avoiding responsibility. He rolled his eyes, cracking open his soda. Why you always gotta be on my case, Hannah? I'm handling it. By handling, you mean letting Mom clean up after you too? He didn't have an answer to that. Just sipped his soda and shrugged. The final straw came when Lisa announced they wanted a small wedding at the house. Nothing fancy, she said, laying out plans that sounded anything but. Just something memorable. I looked at Mom, who was trying to hide her worry. And how do you plan to pay for this small wedding? Alex jumped in. We thought Mom could help, you know, as a gift. I laughed. It was that or scream. You're joking, right? You want more from her? Lisa stood up, hands on her hips. It's not like we're asking for much. Just a little help. A little help? I was fuming now. You've done nothing but take since you got here. Mom's on a fixed income and you're planning a wedding like she's made of money. Alex tried to intervene. Hannah, come on, it's just. No, Alex. Enough is enough. You two need to start taking responsibility for your own lives. Mom's not your personal ATM. Lisa's face went red, and for a moment, I thought she'd yell. But she just scoffed. Fine. We'll figure it out ourselves. Yeah, I said. You do that. Walking out, I told Mom, don't let them bully you into paying for anything. It's time they learned the value of money. Mom nodded, but I could see the conflict in her eyes. She wanted to help Alex, but knew it wasn't helping in the long run. That night, Mark and I talked it over. You can't keep fighting their battles, Hannah, he said, and I knew he was right. But it wasn't just about fighting battles, it was about protecting Mom from being taken advantage of. The next day, I made it clear to Alex and Lisa. You're adults. It's time to act like it. No more handouts. You want a wedding, a life, you work for it. Their response was a mix of shock and anger, but I stood firm. This was the wake-up call they needed, whether they appreciated it or not. The addition of a new family member should have been a joyous occasion, and in a way, it was. Lisa gave birth to a beautiful boy, a bundle of joy that brought a rare smile to everyone's faces, especially Mom's. She was over the moon, completely taken with her new grandson. But the joy was a double-edged sword. It was Mom, not Alex or Lisa, who ended up doing most of the caring for the little one. Watching her juggle her grandson alongside everything else was both heartwarming and heartbreaking. Alex and Lisa's approach to parenting was, let's just say, hands off. While Mom cooed and cuddled the baby, Alex was glued to his computer screen, and Lisa was out more often than not, treating the mall like her personal playground. The contrast couldn't have been starker. Life at Mom's had spiraled into a daily soap opera, minus the scripted resolution at the end of each episode. On one of my visits, I caught Mom poring over a pile of receipts that could easily be mistaken for a novel, with expenses that made my eyes water. Designer outfits, jewelry, luxury items that screamed extravagance from miles away. And there was Alex, ensconced in his virtual world, oblivious to the real one crumbling around him, his newborn son a mere background to his gaming adventures. Alex, isn't it about time you hit pause and maybe, I don't know, looked for a job? My attempt at lightheartedness did nothing to pierce his focus. He grunted something unintelligible, not once tearing his gaze from the screen. Working on it, he mumbled, the same old song and dance. And Lisa? This, I gestured to the mountain of receipts, isn't exactly helping. He shrugged, a gesture that conveyed a universe of indifference. I rounded on Mom. How can you just sit by and watch them drain you like this? Mom sighed, a sound so heavy it seemed to carry the weight of the world. It's only money, Hannah. I can't lose my grandson over it. That's when Lisa waltzed in, arms laden with shopping bags, a triumphant grin plastered across her face. Nothing like a little retail therapy, she announced, dropping her spoils on the table as if she'd returned from a successful hunt. Therapy? More like grand larceny. Mom can't keep this up, Lisa. Her eyes narrowed to slits, her voice cold and sharp as ice. Perhaps we should just leave, then. Let's see how often Mom gets to see her grandson after that. The threat hung in the air, a toxic cloud that threatened to choke us all. I looked to Mom for a sign of outrage, but she met my gaze with a resigned shake of her head, a silent plea to drop it. Later, in the sanctuary of the kitchen, I tried again. You can't let them use you like this, Mom. It's not right. She continued her tea ritual, a calming contrast to the storm brewing in my chest. I know, dear. But what choice do I have? That's my grandson. There has to be a line, Mom. They're walking all over you. She handed me a cup of tea, her eyes locking onto mine with an intensity one rarely saw. "I'll handle it, Hannah. Trust me, I've got this under control." Control? The word tasted bitter. Seems more like they're controlling you. She patted my hand, a gesture meant to soothe. "Just trust me, dear." As I left, the image of Alex lost in another world while Lisa admired her latest shiny trinket, not at me. Mom might think she had a handle on things, but from where I stood, it looked like we were all being dragged down by their weight. The trouble started when Mom got sick out of nowhere. One day she was fine, the next, she was rushed to the hospital with what turned out to be a serious condition. I was there in a heartbeat, barely had time to grab my purse before I was out the door. The hospital became my second home, sitting by her bed, holding her hand, and praying she'd pull through. I called Alex, tried to get through to him and Lisa, telling them, "Mom's sick, she's in the hospital. You need to come, now." But all I got back were excuses. "We're a bit tied up right now, Hannah." "You know how it is," Alex would say, or Lisa would chime in with, "We've got plans already. Can't just drop everything." Plans. Right. Their social calendar was apparently more important than their sick mother lying in a hospital bed. I couldn't believe it. Couldn't understand how they could just carry on with their lives, partying and living it up, while Mom was fighting for hers. I was running on fumes, between my job, the kids, and now this. But I didn't have the luxury of being tied up or having plans. Mom needed me, so that's where I was. Every day, hoping for some improvement, for her to wake up and tell me everything would be okay. 2 months of this hell, and then, just as sudden as she fell ill, she was gone. I was there, holding her hand, telling her I loved her, that I'd look after everything, not to worry. And where were Alex and Lisa? Out. Living their life without a care in the world, not even bothering to see if Mom, or their son for that matter, needed them. The funeral was a blur of faces, condolences, and the overwhelming feeling of loss. But Lisa, in her barely there black dress, managed to stand out, drawing disapproving looks and whispers from everyone. Alex was just as detached, showing no sign of grief, almost as if he was relieved it was all over. The day after, I went to Mom's house, needing to feel her presence, but I was met with Lisa's sneering face. "Looking for something, Hannah?" she mocked, blocking the doorway. "I need to get some of Mom's things," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Oh, I think you're mistaken. This is our house now. You have no business here," she replied, smirking. Alex came up behind her, a smug look on his face. "Yeah, Hannah, Mom changed her will. Everything's ours now. Maybe you should have spent less time at the hospital and more time securing your inheritance." I was speechless, anger and disbelief swirling inside me. "You can't be serious. Mom wouldn't do that." He shrugged, enjoying every moment of my distress. "Believe what you want. But you're not welcome here." Lisa laughed, enjoying the spectacle. "Guess you should have been nicer to us, huh?" Their cruelty hit me hard, but I wasn't about to show them how much. "We'll see what the notary says about this," I managed to say, my voice cold. "Good luck with that," Alex called out as I walked away, their laughter echoing behind me. A week after the whole funeral drama, we all ended up in the notary's office, a place I never thought I'd be fighting a family battle. The air was thick with tension, you could cut it with a knife. Alex and Lisa were smirking like they already won the lottery, but I had a card up my sleeve they didn't see coming. The notary cleared his throat, and the room went dead silent. "The will Mr. Alex Kramer has been referring to," he began, eyeing my brother, "is not the final will. Your mother made another visit here, with Hannah, to draft the final document." Lisa's face turned a shade I didn't know existed. "What the hell does that mean?" she spat, her voice like venom. "It means," I said, my voice steady, "that Mom knew better. She left the house to me, not you two." The notary nodded. "Indeed. The house goes to Hannah." Alex jumped up, his face red. "That's bullshit. She wouldn't do that. Lisa was on her feet too, screaming insults at me that would make a sailor blush. The notary raised his hand, calling for silence. There's more. If it's found that there was any pressure applied to change the will, legal actions could be taken. Alex, still fuming, shot back. I'm her son too. I deserve half of everything. The notary, unfazed, pulled out another document. Your mother anticipated such a claim. Hence, she divided her money into 2 equal parts. However, he paused, looking directly at Alex. She deducted from your share all the money you and your wife have received during your marriage. You could hear a pin drop. How much is left then? Alex's voice was barely a whisper. $10,000, the notary replied. Lisa's scream could probably be heard a mile away. 10,000? That's it? I couldn't help but feel a mix of sadness and relief. Mom had seen through their greed. Seems like Mom knew what she was doing, I said, more to myself than anyone else. Alex and Lisa were in shock, their dreams of easy money shattered in an instant. The notary suggested they leave before things got uglier, and they did, but not before throwing a few more choice words my way. After the showdown at the notary, things escalated pretty quick. Alex and his wife, Lisa, were set on clinging to Mom's house like they owned the place. It was a mess, a proper circus show, until it got so heated that I had no choice but to call the cops. Never thought I'd see the day where I'd have to drag police into family drama, but there we were. When they finally left, under the watchful eyes of the police, the air in the house felt different, heavier somehow. Mark and I started the grim task of taking inventory, noting the gaps where things used to be. It was clear as day, they'd been selling off Mom's things. My heart sank. How could they? I was livid, ready to drag them through the courts. I can't believe this, Mark. They've stolen from us, from Mom. We should sue them for everything they've got left. Mark, ever the voice of reason, put a hand on my shoulder. Hannah, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But think about it. Maybe, just maybe, they'll use that money for something good. For the kid. His words hit me harder than I expected. It was a slim hope, clinging to the idea that maybe, just maybe, they'd finally start acting like responsible adults for their child's sake. It didn't make what they did right, but it gave me a sliver of hope that maybe the cycle would break with their son. Deep down, I knew Mark was right. Pursuing them legally would just drag us all through more mud, and for what? The chance at a few dollars and more heartache? No, it was time to let go, to move forward and focus on healing, on building something better from the wreckage they left behind. So, I let it go, not for them, but for me, for us. It was time to close this chapter and start anew, with the hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd find their way. Months rolled by in silence, a welcome break from the chaos that had enveloped our lives. But peace has a way of being fleeting. Word got to me that Alex and Lisa had sunk further, living in some rundown apartment, scraping by. Alex was jumping from one odd job to the next, and Lisa? She was chasing after rich men, leaving their little boy, my nephew, pretty much on his own. Hearing that, it felt like a punch to the gut. That kid deserved better, so much better than what those two could ever offer him. I started gathering the paperwork, the legal documents needed to strip them of their parental rights. It was a heavy decision, but every fiber of my being told me it was the right one. That boy needed a real family, stability, and I was determined to give it to him. When I finally approached Alex and Lisa with the idea, bracing for a fight, their reaction took me by surprise. They were indifferent. Almost relieved to be rid of the responsibility. You sure about this, Hannah? Alex asked, no hint of the brother I once knew in his eyes. You know, taking on a kid is a lot. I couldn't hide my disgust, my disappointment. He's your son, Alex. Doesn't that mean anything to you? Lisa, ever the opportunist, chimed in with a shrug. If you think you can give him a better life, then why not? We've got our own lives to figure out. Their casual dismissal of their flesh and blood boiled my blood, but I swallowed the anger. This was about him, not them. Yeah, I'm sure. More than you've ever been about anything. He'll be loved and cared for. That's more than what you've ever offered him. The paperwork was straightforward, their signatures quick and emotionless. As I walked away, documents in hand, it was a bittersweet victory. That little boy was going to have a chance now, a real family with me and Mark. It's been a stretch of quiet months, a silence from Alex and Lisa that spoke volumes. They vanished off the grid, no calls answered, no trace of them at their last known spot. I've toyed with the idea of getting the authorities involved, wondering if a missing poster is the next step. Meanwhile, our home's been filled with a different kind of noise, the joyful chaos of kids and their boundless energy. Our little nephew, now effectively my third child, has settled in as if he's always been here. My kids, bless them, have taken to him like ducks to water, showering him with the kind of love and attention that's both heartwarming and a tad overwhelming. We're gonna build the biggest fort this living room has ever seen, declares my eldest, rallying the troops with a sparkle in her eyes that could outshine the sun. The little one, barely understanding but eager all the same, claps his hands with glee, a toothy grin plastered across his face. Fort, fort, he echoes, stumbling over the words, but clear in his enthusiasm. Mark and we've moved into Mom's old house, a sprawling place that seemed too vast once, but now feels just right. There's a room for every mood, a space for every laughter, and a corner for every whispered secret. It's become a home in the truest sense, filled with memories we're making fresh each day. I never thought we'd fill this place up. I muse aloud one evening, watching the kids turn the living room into a labyrinth of cushions and blankets. Mark wraps an arm around me, pulling me close. We always had the space, just needed the right people to fill it. And he's right. This house, once echoing with the past, now thrums with the present and whispers promises of the future. As for Alex and Lisa, their absence is a void, but not one that sucks the life out of us. If anything, it's given us a clarity, a purpose. We've built something solid, something real, out of the wreckage they left behind. We've turned a page, started a new chapter. And in this story, we're all exactly where we're meant to be. Alright, let me take you back to where it all began. It was at this party, you know, the kind where you're not really excited to go but end up having the time of your life. That's where I met Alex. Our friends, who were hosting, had been trying to set us up for ages. They said we'd hit it off, and damn, were they right. So there I was, standing with a drink in my hand, feeling kind of out of place in a crowd of strangers, when Alex walked over. He had this easy smile and a way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. Hey, I'm Alex. You must be the famous Sarah I've heard so much about, he said, extending his hand with a cheeky grin. I remember laughing, the ice in my drink clinking as I shook his hand. Famous? I think you've been fed some tall tales. Nah, he chuckled. Just that you're supposed to be the life of the party. Well, let's not let the rumors down, I replied, and from that moment, we just clicked. We talked about everything and nothing, from our favorite movies to the most embarrassing things we'd ever done. It felt like talking to an old friend, someone I could be myself with without any pretense. As the night went on, we found ourselves away from the crowd, sitting on the back porch, sharing stories under the stars. It was one of those conversations that felt like it could go on forever. You know, my friends thought this would be a good setup, but I think they underestimated how much we'd actually get along, Alex said, looking genuinely surprised. I smirked, taking a sip of my drink. Yeah, I was ready to bail the minute I got here. Glad I didn't. That makes two of us, he replied, his eyes locking with mine in a way that made my heart skip a beat. Just then, some drunk guy stumbled out onto the porch, breaking the moment. Hey, you two gonna make out or what? He slurred, causing both of us to burst out laughing. Get lost, man, Alex said, not missing a beat, but the guy just wandered off, leaving us in stitches. The night ended with Alex asking for my number. "So, Sarah, can I text you sometime? Maybe continue this conversation without the drunk party crashers?" I grinned, feeling that flutter in my stomach again. "I'd like that," I said, and gave him my number. Walking home that night, I couldn't stop smiling. I had a feeling that this was the start of something special. Little did I know how right I was, and just how much of a roller coaster was waiting for us down the line. The day Alex and I decided to meet his parents, my stomach was in knots. I knew they were well off, living in a world that seemed miles away from my simple upbringing. Alex tried to ease my worries on the drive over, his hand finding mine as he glanced my way. "They're gonna love you, Sarah. Just be yourself," he reassured, squeezing my hand. "Yeah, if being myself doesn't include being a nervous wreck," I muttered, trying to smile. We pulled up to a house that looked more like something out of a magazine than a place where people actually lived. It was massive, the kind of place with more rooms than you'd know what to do with. As we walked up to the front door, Alex gave me an encouraging nod, and we stepped into the lion's den. His mom, let's call her Elaine, greeted us with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. His dad, whom we'll call Richard, was more straightforward, offering a firm handshake that felt more like a test of strength than a greeting. "So, you're the girl Alex has been spending all his time with," Elaine said, leading us into the living room. Her tone was polite, but there was an edge to it that made me brace myself. "Yes, Mrs. Jackson. It's so nice to finally meet you," I said, my voice a bit too high-pitched even to my own ears. "Dinner's ready. Let's eat," Richard announced, cutting through the awkward pleasantries. Dinner was an exercise in dodging subtly sharp questions and trying to make small talk that felt like pulling teeth. Elaine was particularly skilled at backhanded compliments. "It's so brave of you to pursue a career in web design, especially coming from such a humble background," she said, her eyes scanning me like I was an interesting specimen under a microscope. "Yeah, well, we can't all inherit a business, can we? Gotta work with what we've got," I shot back, a little more defensively than I intended. Alex shot me a look, a mix of admiration and "please let's not start a war at the dinner table." Richard, for the most part, stayed out of the fray, focusing on his food more than the conversation. But when he did chime in, it was with pointed questions about my intentions with Alex. "So, Sarah, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Still trying to make it in web design, or have you considered something more stable?" I took a deep breath, trying not to let my irritation show. "Well, Richard, I'm pretty committed to my goals. Stability is great, but so is following your passion, right?" The dinner dragged on, with every course feeling like another round in an invisible boxing match. By the time dessert was served, I was mentally exhausted, running on autopilot. On the drive back, Alex was quiet, a storm brewing in his eyes. "I'm sorry about that. They can be a bit intense." I laughed, the tension from dinner finally starting to ebb away. "Intense? That's one way to put it. But don't worry, I can handle a little heat." Alex grinned, reaching for my hand again. "That's my girl. You know, you really impressed me tonight. Standing your ground like that." "Yeah, well, someone's gotta keep your parents on their toes," I joked, feeling the night's stress melt away in the warmth of his smile. Life with Alex was everything I could have hoped for and more. We married surrounded by those who genuinely cared for us, ready to start our new life together. Almost immediately after, we were blessed with the arrival of our son, a bundle of joy who became the center of our world. Yet, despite the happiness our little one brought into our lives, a shadow loomed over our newfound bliss. Alex's parents refused to accept our son as part of the family. They harbored doubts, unfounded and cruel, about the paternity of our child, suggesting he wasn't truly Alex's. One evening, after we'd put our little guy to bed, Alex and I were slumped on the couch, each nursing a cup of tea, when he dropped the bombshell. "Sarah, my mom called today," he began, the words heavy. She's insisting on a paternity test." I choked on my tea, coughing as the words sunk in. She what? My voice was a mix of disbelief and anger. Yeah, I know, it's insane. She's out of line, Alex said, running a hand through his hair, looking as frustrated as I felt. Why now? What's her problem with us being happy? I was fuming, the idea of it all so offensive, so invasive. Alex sighed. She's convinced herself that. I don't know, that our son isn't mine. Says it's for the family's peace of mind. Peace of mind? What a load of crap. I snapped, my temper flaring. And what did you say to that? I told her she was being ridiculous, that it's an insult to even suggest it. But she's adamant. She's even willing to pay for the test, Alex explained, his tone defeated. I stood up, pacing the room, my mind racing. And if we say no? Then she threatens to cut ties, disown me, or worse, drag us through some legal battle. She's bluffing, I think. But Sarah, I don't want this hanging over our heads. I stopped pacing, looking at him, the anger simmering down to a painful realization. So, we just do it? Prove her wrong and shove it in her face? Alex nodded. Yeah. We do it, not for them, but for us. To end this nonsense. The day of the test, we were a quiet storm of nerves and silent defiance. The clinic was sterile and impersonal, the process clinical and cold. We gave our samples, our little guy oblivious to the tension, babbling happily in my arms. On the ride home, Alex tried to lighten the mood. Imagine the look on her face when the results come in. Congratulations, it's a grandson. I couldn't help but snort, despite the situation. She'll probably accuse the lab of being in on a conspiracy. We laughed, a brief respite from the weight of it all. The wait for the results was agonizing, each day stretching on. When the envelope finally arrived, we sat together, hand in hand, as Alex tore it open. Reading the results, a mix of relief and vindication washed over us. 99.99% Alex was indeed the father. I grabbed the phone, dialing his mother's number, before I could second-guess myself. Mrs. Jackson, you might want to sit down for this. The test results? Alex is the father. Shocking, right? My voice dripped with sarcasm. There was a pause on the line, a moment of silence that spoke volumes. Well, I suppose that settles that, then, she said, her voice cold, devoid of apology. Yeah, it does. And let me make something clear, I continued, my voice steady and firm. This is the last time you question my family. The next time you want to play detective, maybe start with a mirror. It's been 10 years. Life had settled into a comfortable rhythm for us, despite the lingering shadows of past conflicts. Then, out of the blue, on a lazy Sunday afternoon, my phone rang. The caller ID flashed a name that made my heart sink and my stomach twist into knots, Elaine, Alex's mom. I glanced at Alex, who was sprawled on the couch with our son, both engrossed in some cartoon that involved more explosions than dialogue. He caught my look and mouthed, "Who is it?" When I showed him the phone, his eyebrows shot up in surprise. Taking a deep breath, I answered, bracing myself. Hello? Sarah, it's Elaine. I know we haven't spoken in a while, but I wanted to wish my grandson a happy 10th birthday, she said, her voice softer than I remembered. I was taken aback, not only by the call itself, but by the gentleness in her tone. Thank you. That's unexpected. There was a pause, and then she continued, I've been doing a lot of thinking, Sarah. About everything. I know I've made mistakes, and I want to try to make things right. Could we possibly meet and talk? I was speechless, a rare occurrence for me. I glanced at Alex again, his face a mixture of curiosity and caution. I'll need to discuss it with Alex. Can I get back to you? Of course, dear. Please do. And tell Alex I said hello. As I ended the call, Alex was immediately by my side, our son looking up at us, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Was that really my mom? What did she want? Alex asked, his voice tight with concern. She wants to talk, says she wants to make amends. Even wished our boy a happy birthday, I said, still trying to wrap my head around the conversation. Alex rubbed his neck, a sign of his unease. Wow, I didn't see that coming. What do you think? Are we ready to open that door again? I sighed, watching our son return his attention to the TV, blissfully unaware of the adult complexities swirling around him. I don't know, Alex. Part of me wants to believe people can change. But another part. I'm scared of getting hurt again, of us getting hurt. Alex took my hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. We've been through worse, haven't we? If she's genuinely trying to make amends, maybe it's worth hearing her out. For his sake, he said, nodding towards our son. When Elaine, my mother-in-law, showed up at our doorstep the following week, she wasn't empty-handed. She brought with her a high-end gaming console for my son, Jamie. The boy's eyes nearly popped out of his head when he saw it. Whoa, is this for me? He gasped, his excitement palpable. Yes, sweetheart, it's for you, Elaine said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. I watched the exchange, my stomach knotted with suspicion. What was she playing at? Later, as we sat in our living room, Elaine dropped the bombshell about her husband, Richard. He's very ill, she said, her usual tough exterior cracking a bit. Stomach cancer. Doctors say he doesn't have long. The news hit hard, even with the strained relationship we had with them. I'm sorry to hear that, Mom, Alex managed, the shock clear in his voice. That's why I want you all to come over next weekend. He wants to see you, especially Jamie, she added, her gaze lingering on our son. Despite my wariness, we agreed. It seemed the right thing to do, given the circumstances. The visit to their mansion was as uncomfortable as I anticipated. Richard looked a shadow of his former self, his illness taking a visible toll. Jamie, oblivious to the tension, was thrilled with the grandeur of the place. Wow, this place is huge, he exclaimed, his young eyes wide with wonder. As the evening wore on, Elaine took Alex and me aside for a private talk. What she said next floored me. We need an heir for the business, and we want Jamie to be that heir, she stated, her tone matter of fact. I blinked, taken aback. What about your other grandson, Matthew? Isn't he the heir? Elaine's lips thinned. Matthew had an accident. A spinal fracture. He can't take over the business now. Her indifference to Matthew's plight chilled me. It was all about the business for her. So, you're just discarding him because he's injured? And now you want Jamie as your backup plan? I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. It's not like that, Sarah. It's about securing our family's future. And Jamie is part of this family, Elaine countered, but her words felt hollow. Alex and I exchanged a look, a silent agreement passing between us. We'll need to think about this, Mom, he said, his voice steady. Jamie's future isn't something we're going to rush into. Elaine nodded, though I could tell she wasn't pleased. Just remember, we're willing to cover all his education expenses. It's an opportunity of a lifetime. The ride back home was quiet, each of us lost in thought. This wasn't just about a business or an inheritance. It was about our son's life, his happiness. And no amount of money could make us compromise on that. After Elaine's bombshell about wanting Jamie to be the heir, Alex and I had a long talk. It was late, the kind of hour that blurs lines and softens shadows, making hard truths a bit easier to speak. Can you believe this, Alex? She basically wants to trade in Matthew for Jamie because he's hurt. It's like, I don't know, picking players for some sick game, I said, frustration bubbling up. Alex rubbed his face, looking as tired as I felt. Yeah, it's messed up. Mom's always been about the business, but this? It's cold, even for her. And what she said about Matthew. It's like he doesn't matter to her anymore. How can she be so heartless? My voice cracked a bit. This wasn't just about offers and inheritance, it was about family, about doing what's right. We're not doing it, Sarah. We're not letting Jamie get sucked into her twisted world. He's a kid, not a chess piece, Alex said, his voice firm. Exactly. He should be playing with toys, not getting groomed to take over a business he knows nothing about, I added, feeling a surge of protective anger. The next day, I called Elaine, my stomach in knots, but my resolve firm. Elaine, we need to talk about your offer, I started, trying to keep my voice steady. Oh? Have you come to your senses, then? Her voice was smug, expecting compliance. No, we haven't come to our senses. We're not letting Jamie be part of this scheme of yours. He's a child, Elaine. And what you're doing to Matthew is unforgivable, I shot back, my anger rising. She scoffed. You're being short-sighted, Sarah. You don't understand what it means to be part of a legacy. To have power. You're just an uneducated girl playing house. That stung, but I plowed on. Maybe I don't understand your world, Elaine, but I do know that what you're offering isn't right for Jamie. We want no part of it. Her tone turned icy. You'll regret this, Sarah. I'll make sure of it. The threat hung in the air, heavy and ominous. After we hung up, I felt a mix of fear and defiance. I didn't have to wait long to see what Elaine's revenge would look like. The very next morning, a knock at the door revealed two social workers, their badges and serious expressions a prelude to trouble. Mrs. and Mr. Jackson, we've received a complaint alleging that you're mistreating your son. We need to talk to you and conduct a preliminary assessment, one of them explained, her voice neutral, but not unkind. Alex and I exchanged a look of disbelief. Mistreating Jamie? That's ridiculous. Who would even say something like that? Alex sputtered, his confusion mirrored in my own heart. The social workers remained professional. We're not at liberty to disclose the source of the complaint, but please understand, we have to investigate all claims. They asked to see Jamie, to talk to him, and to inspect our home. It was humiliating, invasive, but we complied, knowing we had nothing to hide. Jamie, bless his heart, was confused but told them how much he loved us, how we played together, and about the new game console Grandma gave him. After their visit, they seemed satisfied that the complaint was baseless but informed us that they would open a case for a standard 60-day review. Once they left, Alex exploded. My mom has gone too far this time. This is war. I nodded, feeling a mix of dread and determination. Elaine's move was low, even for her. But Alex and I were united, ready to protect Jamie from her manipulations, no matter what it took. A week passed, with an uneasy quiet. Then, as if challenging the peace, the social workers returned, this time with a new claim from Elaine, my mother-in-law. They relayed that there had been a report Jamie was left home alone, a situation we knew never occurred. The accusation was ludicrous, but the implication was severe, and it sent a chill down my spine. After the social workers left, Alex, with a storm brewing in his eyes, called his mother. I could only hear one side of the conversation, but the tension in the room was palpable. Mom, this has to stop. You're not just crossing lines, you're obliterating them. Why would you say Jamie was left alone? His voice was a mix of anger and disbelief. The response was a cold laugh that echoed through the speakerphone, sending a shiver down my spine. Oh, Alex, you really don't know me at all if you think I'll just stand by. Everything will go as I have planned. The following week, our nightmare scenario unfolded. Jamie didn't come home from school. Frantic, we called around, only to discover Elaine had picked him up, claiming she had our permission. My heart stopped. When we finally got Jamie on the phone, his words twisted the knife deeper. Grandma says I can stay with her. She buys me stuff and lets me do what I want, he said. The realization that Elaine would go to such lengths to manipulate our son, to tear him from us, was a wake-up call. We had tried to handle things calmly, to keep the peace for the sake of family unity, but it was clear that Elaine's motivations were driven by control and spite, not love or concern for Jamie's well-being. With heavy hearts, but a determined resolve, we involved the police, explaining the situation and insisting on our son's return. The legal system, slow but eventually effective, sided with us, recognizing the manipulation and unlawfulness of Elaine's actions. The trial felt like a storm that had raged around us, threatening to pull us under. But when it finally passed, the skies cleared in a way we hadn't expected. Richard's death came as a shock, a somber reminder of how fleeting and fragile life could be. Yet, in his passing, he left behind a message, a final act that would redefine the future of our family. It turned out Richard had made some unexpected decisions regarding his estate. Most of it was left to Alex and me, a gesture that spoke volumes of his silent observations and perhaps his regrets. He also made sure to provide for his eldest grandson's rehabilitation, a sign of love for his grandchild despite everything. Elaine was left with just a small monthly allowance, a decision that, no doubt, came as a shock to her. One evening, Alex and I sat down with Jamie, the glow from his nightlight casting soft shadows across his room. It was time to talk about the future, about the choices, and the legacy his grandparents had left behind. "Jamie, you know how Grandpa Richard left us some money, right?" Alex started, his voice gentle, but serious. "Yeah, Dad. Does that mean I can get more video games?" Jamie's innocent question brought a smile to my face, a brief moment of lightness in the gravity of our conversation. "It means a lot more than that, Bud," I chimed in, ruffling his hair. "It means you have options for your future. For school, for what you want to be when you grow up." Jamie looked between us, his young mind trying to grasp the weight of our words. "But I don't know what I want to be yet." "Is that okay?" "Absolutely," Alex assured him. "The most important thing is that you get to choose, to find what makes you happy. And we'll be here to support you, no matter what." "And what about Grandma Elaine?" Jamie's question hung in the air, a reminder of the wound still healing. "We'll deal with that as it comes. But for now, let's focus on us, on our family," I said, hoping to ease his concerns. The days that followed were filled with discussions about trusts, scholarships, and savings for Jamie's education. We wanted to ensure that whatever he decided to pursue, the resources would be there to support him. It wasn't just about securing his future financially, it was about giving him the freedom to dream, to explore, and to become whoever he wanted to be. As for Elaine, the relationship remained strained, a bridge partially burned by past actions. Yet, we held out hope that time might bring healing, might soften the sharp edges of conflict and misunderstanding. For Jamie's sake, we remained open to reconciliation, to finding a way forward that could include her, albeit with boundaries firmly in place. Life's never handed me anything on a silver platter. My name's Anna, and by the time I was 6, both my folks had passed, leaving me in the care of my grandma. She was tough as nails, but with a heart of gold. We didn't have much, but she made damn sure I never felt wanting for love. Education? Well, that was a luxury we couldn't afford. I learned to read and write, but school was a dream that ended when I had to start working to help out. I ended up waitressing at a diner downtown, a place where the tips were as meager as the hopes of ever getting out of there. But it paid the bills, or at least some of them, and it kept me on my feet. That's where I met James. He walked in one rainy afternoon, all drenched and looking like something out of a magazine with his fancy suit and that lost look on his face. "Can I get a coffee, black, and maybe a slice of your best pie?" he asked, shaking off the rain. "Sure thing, coming right up," I replied, trying not to show how his smile made my heart skip a beat. James was from a different world, one where people didn't worry about their next meal or whether they could afford the rent. We got to talking, him with his curious questions about my life, and me, well, I was just being my straight-up self. "So, what's a guy like you doing in a dive like this?" I couldn't help but ask. "Just passing through, looking for a bit of real life, I guess," He chuckled, that smile never leaving his face. Real life, huh? Spend a day in my shoes, you'll get more real life than you bargained for. I joked back, not really expecting him to understand. But he surprised me. He kept coming back, not just for the coffee, but for the conversations. We talked about everything and nothing, and somewhere along the line, I started to fall for him. Hard. James introduced me to his world, one I never knew existed. Fancy dinners, parties where people talked about things I barely understood, and yet, he never made me feel out of place. He was different, kind, and genuinely interested in me, not just my story. Then there was Eleanor, James's mother. The first time I met her, I knew she was sizing me up, her eyes sharp, missing nothing. "So, you're the girl who's caught my son's attention," she said, her voice cool, her gaze even colder. "Yeah, guess I am," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Well," was all she said, turning her attention back to James as if I was no longer there. It was clear from the get-go she didn't approve of me. I was too simple, too uneducated, too everything she didn't want for her son. Eleanor's disdain wasn't the silent type. It was loud, clear, and made its presence felt every single time she walked into a room. If there was one thing I learned quickly after marrying James, it was that his mother, Eleanor, had an opinion on everything. And she wasn't shy about letting you know exactly what she thought, especially if it involved me. Living under the shadow of her disdain was like walking on eggshells, only the eggshells were made of glass, and I was barefoot. Every dinner, every family gathering, she had a way of making her disapproval known, her words sharp enough to cut through the thickest skin. One evening, James and I invited her over for dinner, a simple affair. I had spent the day cooking, trying to make everything perfect, hoping, foolishly, maybe, that I could win her over with my culinary skills. The moment she stepped through the door, I knew it was going to be a long night. "Oh, you decided to cook, Anna? How quaint," she remarked, her voice dripping with condescension as she glanced around our modest living room. "Yeah, thought we'd have a nice family dinner." "Sit down, make yourself comfortable," I replied, forcing a smile, trying to keep the peace for James's sake. James, bless him, tried to smooth things over. "Mom, Anna's been working hard on this meal. Let's just enjoy the evening, okay?" Dinner was a battlefield. With every dish I served, Eleanor had a comment. "This is interesting, Anna. Not what I would have chosen, but I suppose it's edible." I clenched my jaw, counting to 10 in my head. "Glad you think so. Tried something new tonight." James shot me a sympathetic look, his way of saying, "Just ignore her." But ignoring Eleanor was like trying to ignore a hurricane in your living room. The real kicker came when we were talking about Lily's upcoming school year. "I've been looking into schools for Lily," Eleanor began, her tone suggesting she had already made decisions. "The local public school simply won't do. A girl of her potential needs the best education we can provide." I felt my hackles rise. "James and I have been discussing schools. We think the local school is just fine." Eleanor turned her sharp gaze on me. "Anna, with all due respect, what do you know about education? Your background doesn't exactly scream expertise in the matter." That stung. I could feel James tense up beside me, but before he could say anything, I jumped in. "My background might not be fancy, Eleanor, but I know plenty about making the best out of what you've got. Lily will be fine." The rest of the evening passed in tense silence. After Eleanor left, James tried to apologize. "Anna, I'm sorry. She's just set in her ways." "Yeah, I've noticed," I interrupted, not wanting to hear excuses for her behavior. It wasn't just the dinners or the snide remarks about my cooking or our home. It was the way she treated me, like I was an inconvenience, a mistake her son had made. But I wasn't about to let her walk all over me. I had faced tougher things in my life than Eleanor's disdain. What bothered me most was the way she talked about Lily, as if I had no say in my daughter's upbringing. The thought of her undermining me with Lily, teaching her to look down on where she came from, made my blood boil. James was caught in the middle, I knew that. He loved his mother, but he loved me and Lily too. "We'll figure this out, Anna. I promise," he said, pulling me into a hug. Eleanor's idea of music lessons for Lily felt more like a military operation than anything resembling fun. She'd march into our home, piano books in hand, a stern look on her face that would make a drill sergeant proud. Lily, bless her heart, tried to look excited, but I could see the dread in her eyes. It broke my heart. One afternoon, after another one of these so-called lessons, Lily came to me, her little face scrunched up in distress. "Mommy, do I have to keep doing piano with Grandma? She gets mad when I mess up. It's not fun." I knelt down, pulling her into a hug. "Hey, it's okay. You don't have to do anything that makes you unhappy. Let me talk to Grandma, okay?" Lily nodded, wiping away a tear. It was the last straw. I decided it was time for a showdown with Eleanor. That evening, when Eleanor was about to leave, I stopped her at the door. "Eleanor, we need to talk about these music lessons," I said, my voice steady but firm. "Oh? What about them?" she replied, her tone icy, as if she already knew where this was going. "Lily's not happy. She's stressed and upset after every lesson. I thought these were supposed to be fun for her." Eleanor scoffed. "Fun? Music isn't about fun, Anna. It's about discipline, about learning to appreciate the finer things in life. Something you'd know nothing about." I felt my cheeks flush with anger. "Listen, I appreciate you wanting to teach Lily, but not like this. Not at the cost of her happiness." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "And what do you suggest? Letting her quit? That's the problem with your generation. Too quick to give up. No wonder you ended up where you are." That stung. More than I wanted to admit. It's not about giving up. It's about not forcing her to do something she hates. There's a difference. Eleanor shook her head, dismissive. "I won't stand by and watch my granddaughter waste her potential. If you're not interested in her future, I certainly am." That night, after Lily went to bed, I sat down with James. "We need to talk about Eleanor and these piano lessons," I started, trying to keep my voice even. James looked up, his expression wary. "What about them?" "Lily's miserable, James. She's scared of making mistakes because your mom's too hard on her. She's losing her love for music." James sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Mom just wants what's best for Lily. You know how she is with perfection." I felt my frustration rise. But at what cost? Our daughter's happiness? There was a long silence before James spoke again. "I'll talk to Mom. But Anna, you know how she is. She's set in her ways. Maybe we just give it a bit more time?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. More time? "James, our daughter is unhappy." He didn't meet my gaze. "I know, but Mom's heart is in the right place. Let's not make a big deal out of this, okay? We'll work it out. Just give it some time." The conversation ended there, but the issue didn't. James did talk to Eleanor, or so he said, but nothing changed. If anything, the lessons became more frequent, as if Eleanor was doubling down in the face of my concerns. It wasn't that I didn't appreciate music, it was the way Eleanor lorded over Lily, pressing her own brand of perfection onto her, that rubbed me the wrong way. But Lily was a trooper, and somehow, she managed to find joy in the keys, despite her grandmother's heavy-handed teachings. As our wedding anniversary approached, James and I decided to throw a party. Nothing too fancy, just a gathering of close friends and family to celebrate another year of us. The planning was going smoothly until Eleanor threw us a curveball. "I've arranged for a special performance," she announced one evening, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Lily and I will be playing a duet. You'll need to rent a stage and a piano." James and I exchanged a look. "A piano?" he echoed, clearly taken aback. Yes, James. And make sure it's a grand piano. We'll be playing arpeggios, something Anna here might not be familiar with, Eleanor said, her voice dripping with that familiar condescension. I felt my cheeks burn, not from embarrassment, but from anger. The nerve of her, to assume I didn't know what arpeggios were. My grandmother had made sure I was as comfortable with Bach and Beethoven as I was with a frying pan and spatula. But I'd kept my musical skills a secret, a piece of me that I cherished privately, away from judgmental eyes. Not even James knew. But I swallowed my pride and bit back the sharp retort on the tip of my tongue. This wasn't about me or Eleanor. This was about Lily, and if playing this duet made her happy, then I'd move heaven and earth to make it happen. Sure, Eleanor. We'll make sure there's a stage and a piano, I said, my voice steady, despite the storm brewing inside me. Eleanor looked satisfied, her smile sharp as a knife. Good. It'll be educational for you, Anna. A chance to see what real music sounds like. I forced a smile, imagining the look on her face if I sat down at that piano and let loose with a Chopin nocturne or a Debussy prelude. But this wasn't the time for showing off. This was about giving Lily a moment in the spotlight, away from the shadow of her grandmother's expectations. James, bless him, was clueless about the tension. It'll be great, babe. Lily's excited about it, he said later, wrapping an arm around me. I nodded, leaning into his embrace. Yeah, it'll be something all right. As the day of the party drew closer, I found myself feeling more anxious than excited. Not about the party itself, but about that performance. It was a reminder of how much I'd kept hidden from my own family, and of the delicate balance we maintained to keep the peace. The party was in full swing, laughter and chatter filling our backyard, transformed for the night into a slice of celebration. James was mingling, playing the host with an easy charm that made me fall for him all over again every time I saw it. Lily, dolled up in a dress that sparkled under the fairy lights, was buzzing with excitement and nerves about her upcoming performance. I was fussing over the last-minute details when Eleanor made her grand entrance, draped in elegance, but with that ever-present air of scrutiny. Anna, dear, is everything set for our performance? She asked, her eyes darting around, assessing everything with a critical eye. Yep, all set. The piano's tuned, and the stage is waiting, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. Inside, my stomach was a bundle of knots. This whole setup was Eleanor's show, but it was Lily I was worried about. As guests settled, Eleanor decided it was time. Let's not keep our audience waiting, she announced, herding a reluctant Lily towards the stage. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. As Eleanor stepped onto the stage, her heel caught on a loose cable. Time slowed as she stumbled, a gasp escaping from the crowd. Instinctively, she reached out, trying to steady herself on the piano, but instead, she tumbled, landing awkwardly on her arm. The music halted, replaced by murmurs of concern. James rushed to his mother's side, his face etched with worry. Mom, are you all right? He asked, as I hovered nearby, unsure of what to do. Eleanor, ever the prideful matriarch, brushed off the concern with a strained smile. I'm fine, just a little mishap. The show must go on, she insisted, though her voice betrayed a hint of pain. James wasn't convinced. Maybe we should cancel the performance, Mom. You need to get that checked. But Eleanor wouldn't hear of it. Absolutely not. We've prepared for this, and we will perform, she said, her tone brooking no argument. I glanced at Lily, who looked more frightened than ever. I wanted to scoop her up and tell her she didn't have to go through with this, but Eleanor was already positioning her at the piano. The performance started, and it was clear from the first note that something was off. Eleanor's playing was hesitant, the fluid grace she usually possessed replaced by a stilted awkwardness. The pain from her fall was evident in every note she missed, every chord that came out wrong. A murmur ran through the assembled guests as the performance went on. It wasn't long before some couldn't hide their amusement, their whispers turning into barely suppressed chuckles. The sight of Eleanor, always so poised and in control, struggling to play basic arpeggios because of her injured arm was, I had to admit, a bit funny in a tragic sort of way. But my heart went out to Lily, caught in the middle of this farce, her eyes darting between the keys and her grandmother, a look of sheer panic on her face. The performance, meant to be the highlight of the evening, turned into a comedy of errors, with Eleanor's pride leading the charge. Despite the awkwardness of the situation, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sympathy for her. There she was, trying to maintain her dignity in front of an audience that found her predicament amusing. It was a humbling moment for someone who seldom found themselves anything less than perfect. As I watched Eleanor stumble away from the piano, her pride taking a hit right in front of everyone, I was torn. Part of me thought, well, it's about time she came down a peg or two. But then, seeing her trying to blink away those tears of frustration, my heart softened. She might be all sorts of difficult, but she didn't deserve to be humiliated like that. And Lily, my sweet girl, looked so upset by the whole ordeal, I couldn't bear it. Eleanor, her face a mask of disappointment mixed with pain, slowly moved aside. That's when I made my decision. I wasn't about to let the evening end on such a sour note. Not if I could help it. So, there I went, taking a seat at the piano beside Lily, who looked at me with wide, questioning eyes. Just follow my lead, I whispered to her, giving her a reassuring smile. I could feel everyone's eyes on us, curious, maybe even a bit skeptical. We started to play, and it was like magic. The notes just flowed, perfect and clear. For a few minutes, there was no Eleanor, no awkward tension, just me, Lily, and the music. I could hear the surprise in the room, the shift in the atmosphere as we hit our stride. The applause that followed was thunderous, especially from James, who looked like he might burst with pride. But it was Eleanor's reaction that caught me off guard. She was standing there, tears streaming down her face, but this time they were different. There was something like respect, maybe even a hint of regret, in her eyes. I had no idea you could play, she said, her voice soft, almost lost in the buzz of the room. A lot of things you don't know about me. I shot back, half teasing, half serious. It was a moment of triumph, sure, but it was also a bridge, a way to show her there was more to me than she'd ever given me credit for. Lily, ever the showman, took her little bow, her face lit up with a mix of relief and joy. And as the applause died down, I stayed seated at the piano, my fingers resting lightly on the keys, ready for the next piece. Wow, Anna, that was incredible. I had no idea, James said, his voice filled with wonder and something akin to disbelief. Eleanor cleared her throat, stepping closer, her gaze fixed on me. Anna, I must admit, that was quite a performance. You and Lily, you played beautifully together. I raised an eyebrow, surprised by her concession. Thanks, Eleanor. Music's always been a big part of my life. Just never had the chance to show it off like this. The guests murmured their agreement, some still clapping softly, their smiles genuine and encouraging. It was a rare moment of unity, the usual tensions forgotten in the wake of our shared experience. Lily tugged at my sleeve, her earlier shyness replaced by excitement. Mom, can we play another one? Please? I looked down at her, her enthusiasm infectious. Sure, kiddo. What do you say we give them a little Beethoven? The mention of Beethoven caught Eleanor off guard, her interest piqued. Beethoven, you say? I didn't realize you were familiar with his work. There's a lot of things about me you're not familiar with, I shot back, not unkindly. I turned to the guests, who were watching our exchange with a mix of amusement and curiosity. Everyone, we hope you enjoy this next piece. It's one of our favorites. As Lily and I launched into the first few bars of Für Elise, a piece so familiar yet always capable of evoking deep emotions, the room settled into a hushed reverence. The music flowed from us, a testament to hours of practice and a shared love for the piano that I hadn't realized was so strong in my daughter. When the piece ended, the applause was louder, more assured. It was as if our performance had woven a thread of connection through everyone present, drawing us together in appreciation of something truly special. James came over, his pride evident. "I think we might need to get a second piano at this rate," he joked, but I could tell he was seriously considering it. Eleanor approached again, this time her expression softer, more reflective. "Anna, I was wrong about you. Your love for music, for our family, it's clear. I'm sorry for any harsh words I've said." I was taken aback by her apology, the sincerity in her voice unmistakable. "Thank you, Eleanor. That means a lot coming from you. Maybe we can start fresh?" She nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "I'd like that. Very much." The rest of the evening was a blur of laughter, conversation, and even more music. Lily and I played a few more pieces, each one drawing cheers and applause from our guests. It felt like a turning point, a bridge mended through the power of music and a shared moment of vulnerability. It's been a while since that unforgettable night when music changed everything between me and Eleanor, my once daunting mother-in-law. If someone had told me back then that we'd end up close, I would have laughed it off. But here we are, and I can hardly believe it myself. Eleanor softened a lot, especially when it comes to Lily's upbringing. She's not as rigid as she used to be, and I see a warmth in her I never knew existed. These days, we often find ourselves sitting side by side at the piano, our fingers dancing over the keys in perfect harmony. It's become our thing, playing together during family get-togethers or quiet evenings at home. Who would have thought? One evening, as we finished a particularly challenging piece, I turned to Eleanor, unable to hide my grin. "Not bad for two amateurs, huh?" Eleanor actually chuckled, a sound so rare and precious it still caught me off guard. "Speak for yourself, Anna. I've always been a virtuoso in my own mind." Lily, who'd been listening, piped up from where she sat, a stack of music sheets in her lap. "Grandma, you're the best teacher. But Mom's catching up." Eleanor's gaze softened as she looked at Lily, then back at me. "We make a good team, don't we?" "Yeah, we do," I agreed, feeling a surge of pride. Not just in our music, but in how far we'd come, from cautious adversaries to partners in crime at the piano. James, ever the supportive husband and son, would often sit back with a contented smile, watching us. "You three are something else," he'd say, and I knew he meant every word. Eleanor and we talk a lot more now. Not just about music, but about life, love, and everything in between. She's opened up about the challenges of raising her kids alone, and I've shared my fears and dreams for Lily. These conversations, once unimaginable, have become a cherished part of our relationship. "Anna," Eleanor said one night, after Lily had gone to bed, "I was too harsh on you before. You brought something special into this family." Hearing those words, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. "Thank you, Eleanor. That means the world to me. We've come a long way, Eleanor and I. From tension and misunderstanding to respect and genuine affection. It's not always perfect, but the progress we've made is undeniable. And much of it, we owe to those evenings at the piano, where, through the universal language of music, we found a way to understand each other."